You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't have pen and paper by your side tonight, shame on you. You will regret it for the rest of your life. Get it now. Make sure you have pen and paper tomorrow night, Thursday night, and Friday night, because this is the week we're going to fry the enemy. And I mean fry them. Did you know that June 16th, 1983, under Executive Order 12425, entitled International Criminal Police Organizations, Ronald Reagan signed this executive order, which literally gives international criminal police organizations immunity from all laws of the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're going to hear tonight, tomorrow night, Thursday night, and Friday night is going to anger you probably to the point of exploding. You're going to find that we've been betrayed, that the United States really does not exist except in your minds. The Constitution was scrapped many, many years ago. There has been the waging of World War III against not only the people of the United States, but the people of the world in order to bring about a one-world totalitarian socialist government. The symbol of international socialism, ladies and gentlemen, in case you've wondered why I continue to play the rose on this broadcast, is a red rose. Bill Clinton has been photographed in the Oval Office holding up one red rose. So has Fidel Castro, and Khrushchev, and Gorbachev, and Molotov, and I can go on and on and on and on. Lenin, etc. Under this executive order, neither state nor federal law prohibits participation by the United States National Central Bureau of Interpol in a computerized information exchange system. And though federal disclosure laws, etc., must be complied with, the Bureau may, but need not comply with state restrictions on the use of data or state requests with respect to disclosure of data. Do you understand the consequences of what I'm telling you? Under Section 286E-13, approval of fund pledged to sell gold to provide resources for reserve account of Enhanced Structural Adjustment Facility Trust. If Federal Reserve notes are money, why is the United States paying its debts in gold? The Secretary of the Treasury is authorized to instruct the United States Executive Director of the Fund to vote to approve the fund's pledge to sell, if needed, up to 3 million ounces of the fund's gold to restore the resources of the reserve account of the Enhanced Structural Adjustment Facility Trust to a level that would be sufficient to meet obligations of the trust payable to lenders which have made loans to the loan account of the trust that have been used for the purpose of financing programs to fund members previously in arrears to the fund. In other words, as always, we're bailing out with 3 million ounces of gold people who cannot pay their debts. I, William J. Clinton, President of the United States of America, find that the proliferation of nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons and of the means of delivering such weapons constitutes an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States, and hereby declare a national emergency to deal with that threat. Executive Order 12868 of September 30th, 1993. You'd better understand what I'm telling you, and you'd better understand what that executive order just said in the context of the rest of this program, ladies and gentlemen. It is important. Executive Order 12359 of April 22nd, 1982, Section 1, the multinational force and observers in which the United States participates pursuant to Section 138 of Public Law 97-51 and Public Law 97-132 is hereby designated as a public international organization entitled to enjoy the privileges, exemptions, and immunities conferred by the International Organizations Immunities Acts. Also, ladies and gentlemen, the United States Treasury Department was established under the Treaty of Bretton Woods, wherein it specifically states that the Treasury Department comes under the International Monetary Fund, an international organization under the United Nations, and the Secretary of the Treasury, which up until recently was Lloyd Bentsen, cannot be paid by the United States of America, but instead receives his remuneration from the International Monetary Fund. That makes the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms an international police organization exempt from the laws of the United States of America, and that explains what has been happening in recent months and years. It also explains how the President is being held hostage in the White House by a security force called the Secret Service, which owes its allegiance to the United Nations and not the United States of America. Multinational Force, Public Law 97-132, Section 23, Privileges and Immunities of the Multinational Force Organization. The MFO shall enjoy the status, privileges, and immunities accorded in Article 2 of the Convention on the Privileges and Immunities of the United Nations, hereinafter the Convention. The provisions of Article 2 of the Convention on the Privileges and Immunities of the United Nations, hereinafter the Convention. The provisions of Article 2 of the Convention shall also apply to the property, funds, and assets of participating states used in the receiving state in connection with the activities of the MFO. Such participating states may not require immovable property in the receiving state without agreement of the government of the receiving state. The government of the receiving state recognizes that the right of the MFO to import free of duty equipment for the MFO and provisions, supplies, and other goods for the exclusive use of members of the MFO includes the right of the MFO to establish, maintain, and operate at headquarters, camps, and posts, service institutes, providing amenities for the members of the MFO. Ladies and gentlemen, the equipment coming into the United States from foreign nations is equipment belonging to the MFO of the United Nations. Locally recruited personnel, 37. The MFO may recruit locally. Such personnel is required. The authorities of the receiving state will, upon the request of the Director General, assist the MFO in the recruitment of such personnel. Sympathetic consideration will be given by the Director General in the recruitment of local personnel to requests or observations of authorities of the receiving state in order to avoid any adverse effect on the local economy. The terms and conditions of employment for locally recruited personnel should be prescribed by the Director General and shall generally, to the extent practicable, be no less favorable than the practice prevailing in the receiving state. And on and on and on. Public Law 97-132. Ladies and gentlemen, now, here we have Executive Order 11490. Under Part 3, Department of the Treasury, it states specifically that the Secretary of the Treasury shall develop policies, plans, and procedures for the performance of emergency functions, not normal functions, emergency functions, with respect to the following, and it goes through an awful lot of things that would just frost you, ladies and gentlemen. But number 12, maintenance of the central government accounting and financial reporting system, administration of customs laws, tax laws, and laws on control of alcohol, alcoholic beverages, tobacco, and firearms, suppression of counterfeiting and forgery of government security stamps, coins, and currency, protection of the President and the Vice President and other designated persons, etc., etc., etc. Now, don't go away, because what you're going to hear tonight is probably some of the most important information you'll ever hear in your life. That goes doubly for tomorrow night, triply for Thursday night, and quadruply for Friday. From a hardbound book, ladies and gentlemen, a thick book entitled Review of United Nations Charter Collection of Documents, Senate Document 87, 83rd Congress, 2nd Session. On page 461, paragraph 99, disclosure and verification of armed forces and armaments United States Proposal in the Disarmament Commission, April 5th, 1952. That's 1952. The General Assembly resolution calling for regulation, limitation, and balanced reduction of all armed forces and armaments directs that the Commission be guided by a number of principles, including the following. Operative paragraph 3A. In a system of guaranteed disarmament, there must be progressive disclosure and verification on a continuing basis of all armed forces, including paramilitary, security, and police forces, and all armaments, including atomic. Such verification must be based on effective international inspection to ensure the adequacy and accuracy of the information disclosed. This inspection be carried out in accordance with the decisions of the International Control Organ to be established. It's in effect, we have Russian observers on United States soil supervising the disarmament of the United States of America as of this moment, and they've been here for a long time. Remember last night you heard that according to a newspaper article in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, United States atomic submarine commanding officers were ordered by the President to turn in their launch keys. On page 462, under A, extent of disclosure and verification, paragraph 2, the disclosure must cover all armed forces of every kind, including paramilitary, security, and police forces, and all armaments, including atomic. 3, the verification of armed forces and armaments must likewise cover all armed forces of every kind, including paramilitary, security, and police forces, and all armaments, including atomic. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we go to a document entitled Disarmament, Two Approaches, a Comparison, United States and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, Disarmament Proposals. Now, understand what I'm telling you. This is a joint proposal between the United States and the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. The breakup of the Soviet Union was not an accident. It is a deceit. This was published by the United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, November 1961, ladies and gentlemen, November 1961. And this outlines the entire plan to disarm the world, including the United States of America and its people. Disarmament goals: a free world under the rule of law with procedures for the peaceful settlement of disputes. The United States, a free, secure, and peaceful world of independent states adhering to common standards of justice and international conduct and subjecting the use of force to the rule of law. A world where adjustments to change takes place in accordance with the principles of the United Nations. Under the USSR, no provision. After general and complete disarmament has been achieved, measures to be put into effect for preserving peace and security in accordance with the United Nations Charter. In other words, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics agreed only to agree once disarmament has occurred. We are disarming, they are not. Under general and complete disarmament, under the United States, a world where there shall be a permanent state of general and complete disarmament under effective international control. Under the USSR, general and complete disarmament under strict and effective international controls. Note, in elaborating on this goal, the Soviets reject control of agreed levels of armaments at any stage except after general and complete disarmament has been obtained. Under use of resources, a world where the resources of nations shall be devoted to man's material, cultural, and spiritual advance. That's the United States goal. Under the USSR, part of funds released from expenditure on armaments is to be used for economic assistance to underdeveloped countries. You wonder what's happening? This explains it all, ladies and gentlemen, and tomorrow night we will continue and elaborate, and the night after and the night after that. You see, last night's parade of apologists and wimps crying because somebody's going to come after them was pathetic. You see, they've been after us for a long, long time. You need to find your cojones and get ready to fight, if you understand what I mean. If you don't, you better hide in the closet, because the blood is going to run in the streets of America, and it's not far off, ladies and gentlemen. Just remember, we can do nothing. Nothing. They must do it first. United States statutes at large containing the laws and concurrent resolutions enacted during the first session of the 87th Congress of the United States of America. Treason, 1961, and reorganization plans, amendment to the Constitution and proclamations. Treason is not part of this title. That's my interjection. Volume 75 in one part. Now, if I'm going too fast to write this down, order the tape, and you better order it quick. United States Government Printing Office, Washington, 1961. Public Law 87-297, September 26, 1961, to establish a United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled. Title I, short title, Purpose and Definitions. Section 1, this act may be cited as the Arms Control and Disarmament Act. Lays it all out, ladies and gentlemen, establishes the agency that is to supervise the disarmament of the United States, overseen and inspected by appointed officers of the Soviet Union. United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, organization and functions. And ladies and gentlemen, this is dated October 17, 1961. Disarmament Document Series, United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. Resolution adopted by an 87-11 vote in the United Nations General Assembly regarding Soviet 50 megaton bomb, number 1632, 16-1043, plenary meeting, October 27, 1961. The General Assembly, seized with the question of halting nuclear weapons tests, solemnly appeals to the government of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics to refrain from carrying out its intention to explode in the atmosphere a 50 megaton bomb before the end of this month. That was the scare tactic. The result was a White House statement of October 30th, 1961, calling for world disarmament by the President of the United States. He says, we have no wish ever to use this military power. We are ready now as ever to sign the test ban treaty proposed at Geneva. We are ready now as ever to negotiate a treaty for general and complete disarmament. You see, they have been conducting this in the open in the documentation, but behind closed doors to the public. Disarmament Document Series, United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, report to the United Nations Disarmament Commission on the 18-Nation Disarmament Committee's deliberations from the beginning of the conference, March 14, 1962 to June 1, 1962. The co-chairman of the conference of the 18-Nation Committee on Disarmament, at the request of that conference, transmit herewith to the United Nations Disarmament Commission, pursuant to General Assembly Resolution 1722-16, the following interim progress report on the conference deliberations for the period March 14, 1962 to June 1, 1962. It outlines the participants. It outlines the agreements. It outlines the plenary deliberations. It tells the deliberations and the decisions of the Committee of the Whole, the informal meeting reports, the Subcommittee on a Treaty for the Discontinuance of Nuclear Weapons Tests and the Disarmament of the Nations of the World, and then there are conference documents listed. Then Disarmament Document Series, United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, text of presidential statement after signing into law the bill, Public Law 87-297, 87th Congress, establishing a United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, September 26, 1961. With the signing of H.R. 9118, there is created the United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. This act symbolizes the importance the United States places on arms control and disarmament in its foreign policy, the creation for the first time by an act of Congress of a special organization to deal with arms control and disarmament matters emphasizes the high priority that attaches to our efforts in this direction: treason. Our ultimate goal, as the Act points out, is a world free from war and free from the dangers and burdens of armaments, in which the use of force is subordinated to the rule of law and which international adjustments to a changed world are achieved peacefully. It is a complex and difficult task to reconcile through negotiating the many security interests of all nations to achieve disarmament, but the existence of this agency will provide new and better tools for this effort. I am pleased by the bipartisan support this bill enjoyed in the Congress. The leaders of both political parties gave encouragement and assistance. The new agency brings renewed hope for agreement and progress in the critical battle for survival of mankind. Translate New World, Totalitarian, Socialist, Utopian Government. The next one, disarmament, two approaches, a comparison. U.S. and USSR disarmament proposals, United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, dated November 1961. Ladies and gentlemen, the United States calls on all states to make a continuous, uninterrupted effort to achieve a total program for general and complete disarmament. Do you understand? USSR, although it has put forward certain proposals apart from its disarmament plan to ease international tensions and create a favorable climate for disarmament, the USSR takes the position insofar as disarmament measures are concerned that there must be full agreement on all aspects of general and complete disarmament before implementing a single measure. We are disarming, they are not. And it goes on into the goals that I've already communicated to you. Disarmament, the continuing search by William C. Foster, Director, United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. Disarmament, the continuing search. Perhaps as you reflect on the news these days, you feel that it is not comfortable to be an inhabitant of this planet. But of course, except for brief periods in history, it never has been comfortable, and for great numbers of people, annihilation by club, arrow, spear, sword, bullet, or what have you, has been a constant threat at one place or another on this relatively small globe. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the United States government and the government of the United Kingdom at the end of World War II that promoted and continues to promote the Holocaust by the Germans in order to instill in the consciousness of the people of the world that disarmament must take place. Whether or not the Holocaust occurred is not the question, and you'd better understand that right now. Of course, to those Jewish people who were in the concentration camps and who suffered and who lost family members, and to the Poles and the Gypsies and the blacks and the Christians and many, many others, the Holocaust is as real in their minds whether or not it occurred, and get off their back about it. You see, it's not about them, it's about world government. These people are being used to promote it, just like you're being used every day of your life. Blueprint for the Peace Race. Outline of basic provisions of a treaty on general and complete disarmament in a peaceful world. The United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. Not to an arms race, but to a peace race, to advance together step by step, stage by stage, until general and complete disarmament has been achieved. President Kennedy, September 25, 1961. This is from the United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, Publication 4, General Series 3, released May 1962. This, ladies and gentlemen, outlines the disarmament of all nations of the world and the combining of the military forces of the United States and Russia under the United Nations as a world police force. It outlines 3 stages during which this is going to take place. We are at the end now of stage 2. In stage 3, the civilian populations of the United States and the other countries of the world who still have weapons will be disarmed. Only armament will be left in each country that is sufficient to equip the police force necessary to maintain internal order. Don't believe it? Get it. Read it. Understand it. And stop whining and crying. Join a militia and get ready to fight for your freedoms, or get in the closet and hide until they come and put the chains on you. Because democracy is a code word for socialism. And that's what's coming. Disarmament, the new. Disarmament, the new United States Initiative, United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, Publication 8, General Series 5, released September 1962. And this, again, has an introduction, the call for leadership by John J. McCloy, who at that time was the leader or executive director of the Council on Foreign Relations, who outlines the disarmament of the world led by the United States and the Soviet Union, talks about the complexities of disarmament, the Geneva Test Ban negotiations, the United States' determination to halt the arms race, the Disarmament Agency, the common market, working toward a world without war and a new world order, history of disarmament negotiations, U.S. proposal for disarmament, need for adequate verification, question of the proper forum, improving United Nations peacekeeping machinery, describing the forces that will be combined by the 2 major powers to police the world, taking the first steps. United States outlines initial proposals of program for general and complete disarmament by Dean Rusk. Disarmament, a worldwide responsibility, laying basis for disarmament. U.S. proposals for work of conference, call for early action on testing, etc., 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 etc. The dilemma, how to do it. He says, I appreciate that I am here before a sophisticated audience today. Most of you have read the reports that one Polaris submarine carries more explosive power than all the bombs dropped by both sides during World War II, including the 2 atomic bombs. Scare statements. You have to understand that the Cold War was a scam to bring this about, and the Soviet Union has recently released publicly the documents which prove that all during the Cold War, their bombers never once carried an atomic weapon. It was a scare tactic to bring this about and fund the development of technology through the willing giving of tax dollars in the face of a Cold War enemy by the American people and the people of the world, to develop the technology to control the people of the world under the New World Order. Toward a world without war, a summary of United States disarmament efforts past and present. United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, General Series 6. This is Publication 10, General Series 6, released October 1962. World order will be secured only when the whole world has laid down these weapons which seem to offer us present security but threaten the future survival of the human race. President John F. Kennedy said that in his State of the Union message, January the 11th, 1962, the whole time knowing that there was no threat. Their intercontinental ballistic missiles never were a threat to the United States of America. The American Journal of International Law, Volume 56, 1962, published by the American Society of International Law, Publication Office, Lancaster Press, Incorporated, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Executive and Editorial Office, 2223 Massachusetts Avenue, Northwest, Washington 8, D.C., copyright 1962. This is the American Journal of International Law, ladies and gentlemen, and in here it outlines the official documents disarmament, outline of basic provisions of a treaty on general and complete disarmament in a peaceful world, submitted by the United States delegation to the United Nations Committee on Disarmament, Geneva, April 18, 1962, in which it outlines everything that I have already discussed in an official treaty, ladies and gentlemen, which was signed and which was ratified by the Senate, calling for the complete disarmament of all weapons of all nations. Progressive inspection for disarmament, the concept of progressive zonal inspection. United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, Publication 13, released January 1963. This proposes the zonal concept. The extent of inspection is related to amount of disarmament. Amount of assurance is related to degree of risk to parties to the treaty. Principles of disarmament treaty outline. By stages within specified limits. Number 2, balanced. No party can gain a military advantage. No party can suffer a loss of security. 3, verified during and after it occurs. The extent of verification is to be related to the amount of disarmament and the degree of risks involved, verification of both arms reduction and arms level. 4, accompanied by progressive strengthening of the United Nations. Accompanied by progressive strengthening of the United Nations. 5, carried out in each successive stage after the decision that all measures in preceding stage will have been accomplished and verified. All arrangements for the next stage are ready to operate. Objects and activities to be verified during disarmament. 1, destruction of armaments. 2, conversion of armaments to peaceful uses. 3, reduction of armed forces. 4, halting or limiting of declared production, testing, and other specified activities. 5, agreed levels of armaments and armed forces. 6, absence of undeclared production, testing, and other specified activities which are subject to termination or limitation. Now remember, ladies and gentlemen, we are a vassal state of the United Nations by treaty and by passage of the United Nations Participation Act. Disarmament is to be balanced, verified under the progressive zonal inspection plan. Division of national territories into zones. That's what regional government is all about. Declaration to the International Disarmament Organization of total level of armaments, forces, and specified types of activities subject to verification in each zone. Selection of zones for inspection. Declaration to the International Disarmament Organization of the exact locations of armaments, forces, and specified types of activities which are within the zone or zones selected for inspection in that step. Arrangements to assure against undeclared movements of the objects of verification, aerial and mobile ground inspection of objects of verification within the zones selected. 7, once a zone has been selected and inspected, it remains open for further inspection while verification is being extended to additional zones. 8, when the first zones have been inspected in accordance with an agreed time schedule, arms levels would again be declared as in 2, then the next zone or zones would be selected and inspected as in 4 through 7, and so on. By the end of the final stage, when all disarmament measures have been completed, inspection will have been extended to all zones in the territories of the parties to the treaty. Disarmament is to be carried out within definite time limits by stages, and each stage is divided into 3 steps. Selection of zones may be 1, by the International Disarmament Organization, 2 by the non-host Western or Soviet bloc, 3 by random choice, 4 some combination of the above. The breakup of the Soviet Union occurred, ladies and gentlemen, to fool the American people into accepting disarmament, not understanding what this is all about. You see, these people who run the world understand sheeple better than you would ever believe. And you'd better quit being sheeple right this moment. You'd better pull the wool out from over your eyes. Take off that fur coat. Stand up on your own 2 feet. Stop buying. Join a militia. Get ready to fight for your freedoms or lose them all very shortly. Get a book entitled Disarmament Proposals. Published in 1964, the author is Sohn, S-O-H-N, Disarmament Proposals, 1964. Sohn, S-O-H-N, outlines the entire plan, including the disarmament of the individual American common people. Arms Control and National Security, 2nd edition. United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, Washington, D.C., 20451. And folks, my throat is dry. I must take a short break. Don't go away. Why should it work now if it failed before? Arms Control and National Security, 2nd edition. Published by the United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, Washington, D.C., 20451. Ladies and gentlemen, listen very carefully. As everyone knows, most attempts at disarmament throughout history have ended in failure. One might wonder, therefore, why any present or future attempts, even at partial disarmament, should be any more successful. After all, the political organization or disorganization of the world remains essentially as it has been in past centuries. Despite the existence of the United Nations, power remains polarized at the level of the nation state. So understand that this is not about prevention of war. It's about establishing a world government. It says there's a new factor in the picture, which in the end may outweigh all the others. It is technology. Technology. Even as it has introduced new problems, technology has also brought an unprecedented promise of solutions. In the first place, it has brought an incentive for arms control and disarmament agreements, which historically neither common sense nor statesmanship has ever been sufficient to provide. In the second place, it is equipping us with advanced means of surveillance, thus making politically acceptable agreements which earlier would not have been possible. The 1963 Limited Test Ban Treaty, which prohibits nuclear tests in the atmosphere, underwater, and in outer space, is a case in point. This treaty was made necessary by technology. It also was made possible by technology. It talks about a new approach to security using this technology. It also talks about, ladies and gentlemen, a complete definition of the term arms control would fill a page, and even then not everyone would be satisfied. For practical purposes, however, arms control might be summed up as efforts to reduce the likelihood of war and to limit its effects if it occurs. It thus covers a broad spectrum of possible measures. And listen to this. History and advancing technology have combined to make arms control a highly complex subject, calling for the concerted efforts of military men, diplomats, physical and social scientists, jurists, and others. In this same report on page 18, and remember, ladies and gentlemen, this was published when? When was this published? 1970, I believe. I think. Open Skies. The new approach was marked by President Eisenhower's Open Skies Plan in 1955, which called for reciprocal aerial inspection of the United States and the Soviet Union and the exchange of military blueprints by the two countries. This plan did not meet with acceptance by the Soviets, who said that such aerial surveillance should not be permitted until the last stage of a comprehensive disarmament process. Now remember, it says until the last stage. The Open Skies Treaty was just recently signed, and Russian aircraft overfly the United States to inspect the disarmament of the United States now on a daily basis, and we are overflying what used to be known as the Soviet Union. We are disarming. They are not. According to their policy, they will not until everybody else does, although they say they are. And although our government is fooling us into believe that they are, understand, ladies and gentlemen, it is a scam, because if anything goes wrong, the military might of what used to be known as the Soviet Union will enforce the formation of the New World Order, accompanied by the treasonous military officers of the United States military services, all four of them, who are in total complicity and agreement, and are even now, as we speak, acting as the police force for the New World Order. In this book, 15th Annual Report to the Congress, ladies and gentlemen, the White House, July 29, 1976, by Gerald R. Ford, and somewhere in here there's something important that I was supposed to read to you, and I can't remember where it's at. Let me see if I can get somebody in here to find what I'm looking for while I go on to the next one. What am I looking for in there? Yearbook of the United Nations, 1978, Volume 32, Department of Public Information, United Nations, New York. Disarmament and Related Matters. Chapter 1, down at the third paragraph. The Conference of the Committee on Disarmament held 2 sessions in Geneva during the year at which it continued its discussions of measures relating to the cessation of the nuclear arms race at any early date and to nuclear disarmament, non-nuclear measures, and other collateral measures, general and complete disarmament, and the organization of its work. At its first 1978 session, prepared a special report on the state of the various questions under its consideration and submitted it to the special session of the Assembly. Under the heading, the 10th Special Session of the General Assembly, the 10th Special Session of the General Assembly, the first session to be devoted to disarmament, opened on 23rd May 1978 at the United Nations headquarters, New York. The Assembly concluded its work in the early hours of 1 July. Earlier during that final meeting on 30 June, it adopted Resolution S-10/2, containing the final document of the 10th Special Session of the General Assembly, comprising an introduction, a declaration, and a program of action, and establishing new international machinery for disarmament. On page 22, it also decided to establish a program of fellowships on disarmament. Implementation of the priorities mentioned in the program should lead to general and complete disarmament under effective international control, the Assembly asserted. And the Committee on Disarmament was to undertake the elaboration of a comprehensive program of disarmament in order to ensure that the goal of general and complete disarmament became a reality in a world in which the new international economic order was strengthened. Tell Rush Limbaugh to wake the hell up. He's a liar. He's a detractor. He's a scam. Necessary measures should be taken to maintain international peace and security, including the obligation of states to place at the disposal of the United Nations agreed manpower for an international peace force equipped with agreed types of armaments to ensure that the United Nations was able to deter or suppress any threat or use of arms in violation of its purposes and principles. General and complete disarmament under strict and effective international control should permit states to have at their disposal only those non-nuclear forces, armaments, and facilities agreed to be necessary for internal order. No New World Order? Rockefeller's not involved? The Trilateral Commission is not involved? Baloney. They admit it in their own publications. Final document. On June 30th, 1978, at the end of the special session, the General Assembly adopted Resolution S-10/2, by which it adopted also the final document of the 10th Special Session of the General Assembly, providing a broad platform for further efforts by the United Nations in the field of disarmament, etc., etc., etc. New World Economic Order, New World Order, words echoed over and over again years ago. The special session must demonstrate to the world that the fundamental principles of the Charter continued to serve as a guiding light for the international community in its quest for a new economic, political, and social order based on equality and justice for all. Limbaugh and all the others know all about this. Resolution S-10/2 is recommended by Ad Hoc Committee of 10th Special Session AS-1023, Part 1, adopted without vote by Assembly on 30th June 1978. Without vote. The nuclear and conventional arms buildup threatens to stall the efforts aimed at reaching the goals of development to become an obstacle in the road of achieving the new international economic order and to hinder the solution of other vital problems facing mankind. Did you find that? Where is it? Right here? Okay. Conference of the Committee on Disarmament, and this is from 15th Annual Report to the Congress. U.S. Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, Publication 88, released July 1976. The Geneva-based Conference of the Committee on Disarmament held 2 sessions during 1975 that proved to be among the most active in the 13-year history of this principal multilateral forum for arms control negotiations. Its 31 member nations represent a geographic and political cross-section of the world. The representatives of the United States and the Soviet Union serve as co-chairmen. Ambassador Joseph Martin, Jr. led the U.S. delegation. The committee's agenda included several new issues that had been referred to it by the 1974 UN General Assembly: the question of nuclear weapon-free zones, arms control implications of nuclear explosions for peaceful purposes, and environmental warfare. In addition to the topic of chemical weapons restraints and a comprehensive nuclear test ban. And under environmental warfare, listen to this, the highlight of the sessions was the August 21st tabling by the United States and Soviet representatives of identical texts of a draft, listen to this, identical texts of a draft entitled Convention on the Prohibition of Military or Any Other Hostile Use of Environmental Modification Techniques. And it goes on and on and on. The members of the United Nations are fully aware of the conviction of their peoples that the question of general and complete disarmament is of the utmost importance and that peace, security, and economic and social development are indivisible, and they have therefore recognized that the corresponding obligations and responsibilities are universal. Conventional weapons control, and this again from the 15th Annual Report to the Congress. During the spring session, Ambassador Martin urged that the committee explore practical means of restraining the worldwide competition in conventional arms. Conventional arms. That means your rifle. In addition to reiterating the United States' willingness to assist in the establishment of conventional arms control arrangements on a regional basis, Ambassador Martin set forth for the committee's consideration principles applicable worldwide to the acquisition and transfer of conventional arms. These principles are discussed in greater detail in the chapter on arms transfers. That program, passing through all the necessary stages, should lead to general and complete disarmament under effective international control. Notice, folks, it does not say partial disarmament. It does not say disarmament of military forces. And remember, in an early publication, it even included the police. It says complete disarmament. Complete disarmament. Genuine and lasting peace can only be created through the effective implementation of the security system provided by the Charter of the United Nations and the speedy and substantial reduction of arms and armed forces by international agreement and mutual example, leading ultimately to general and complete disarmament under effective international control. That's why bases are closing but not closing. They're closing but not closing. They were said to close to save money, and then they don't close and spend money to establish those bases as prisons and mental treatment centers to treat, ladies and gentlemen, patriots under the New World Order who will be considered to be primitives. Klingons, if you will. Klingons. who refuse to adapt to the new world socialist order. They will be called mentally ill. On page 45, under the Yearbook of the United Nations 1978, it talks about, where is it? The study should be made in the context of how disarmament can contribute to the establishment of the new international economic order. No new world order, no new world economic order, no plot, no complicity of the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the members of Congress, the members of the executive branch of government. Anyone who tells you that is a liar. They are part of the problem. They are part of the enemy. They are leading you down the garden path. Remember, the symbol of international socialism is the red rose. It was the symbol of the rose and cross, which came out of the ancient mysteries which were suppressed between the cold north wind. The snow were the seed planted by the adepts, concealing their true religion, their true philosophy. Wait for the spring thaw, when the rising sun and the generative force, the phallus, will regenerate. The old pagan religions, under the guise of a new one-world religion and one-world totalitarian socialist government. Freedom will die forever. There will be no rapture. No benevolent space brothers will come to save you, for that is one of the deceptions also. Good night. God bless you all. And if I'm still alive tomorrow night, we will continue. God save the Republic. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. Folks, I get faxes and letters all the time. I've got to read you a fax and explain a couple of things. It says, Mr. Cooper, on January 16th, 1995, you scolded us, your listeners, for spreading rumors. Then you turned right around and read a story out of a newspaper that you said was unproven. It is hard to believe our military would allow a leak of this magnitude to take place. As you said, there are no leaks. Do you really believe that Clinton would order the commanders of United States submarines to turn in their launch keys? Mr. Cooper, will you please use some of your airtime to teach, not spoon-feed us, your listeners, on how to research and prove the rumors that we hear? Not all of us have had the pleasure of having the U.S. military teach us the difference between truth and fiction. Good shows on 1/17/95. Looking forward to tonight's show. Folks, I want you to understand, unless you can show me a contract with my signature on it saying that I owe you something, then you can forget all this crap, because that's what it is. I don't owe you anything. In fact, most of you are getting much more than you ever will deserve from me, and I've placed my life on the line. I've taken food out of the mouths of my family members to try to save this country. I've been seriously injured in this fight. So, don't do this to me. You haven't got the credentials, nor the time on this battlefield to do this to me. And I get this kind of crap all the time. A rumor is something that's unfounded, that has no source, that you cannot point to, that you cannot track down. I did not spread a rumor. I read you the story from a newspaper I cited the source of the newspaper, not only the source of the newspaper, but the Newswire service that furnished the newspaper with the story. I did not say that Clinton ordered anybody. I said the newspaper said it. And I don't know if they've turned in their lunch keys or not. I suspect if they were ordered to, that they either have or will very shortly. And as you heard last night, and you will continue to hear tonight, whether they have done it yet or not, they will do it at some very near time in the future. And no, I'm not going to teach you how to do research. That was the job of your parents and your school teachers. And if you didn't learn it there, then you better get down to the library and find a book on how to research. Talk to the librarian on how to use the library and learn it yourself. You see, I can only do so much for you people. There was one guy I heard tonight that was led by the Lord to WWCR until I dumped on him. And now he's a Tom Valentine listener, and I got to tell you, if there's any more panty-waist, puke-faced cowards out there, you can get your butt back 2 hours and be a Tom Valentine listener also, because I don't have time for you. And frankly, my dear Scarlett, I don't give a damn. This is from document 55, October 24th, 1950, United Nations. Addressed by President Truman to the General Assembly, extract, October 24th, 1950, on cooperative disarmament. And I'm going to excerpt paragraphs out of this speech. Quote, disarmament is the course which the United States would prefer to take. It is the course which most nations would like to adopt. It is the course which the United Nations from its earliest beginnings has been seeking to follow. First, the plan must include all kinds of weapons. Outlawing any particular kind of weapon is not enough. The conflict in Korea bears tragic witness to the fact that aggression, whatever the weapons used, brings frightful destruction. Second, the plan must be based on unanimous agreement. A majority of nations is not enough. No plan of disarmament can work unless it includes every nation having substantial armed forces. One-sided disarmament is a sure invitation to aggression. Third, the plan must be foolproof. If real disarmament were achieved, the nations of the world, acting through the United Nations, could join in a greatly enlarged program of mutual aid. As the cost of maintaining armaments decreased, every nation could greatly increase its contributions to advancing human welfare. All of us could then pool even greater resources to support the United Nations in its war against want. Harry Truman was a 33rd degree Freemason of the Scottish Rite. In September of 1950, this article appeared in the New Age. It is the magazine of the House of the Temple, of the Supreme Council, of the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. And I quote, God's plan is dedicated to the unification of all races, religions, and creeds. This plan, dedicated to the new order of things, is to make all things new. A new nation, a new race, a new civilization, and a new religion. A non-sectarian religion that has already been recognized and called the religion of the Great Light. Looking back into history, we can easily see that the guiding hand of Providence has chosen the Nordic people to bring in and unfold the new order of the world. Records clearly show that 95% of the colonists were Nordics, Anglo-Saxons. Providence has chosen the Nordics because the Nordics have prepared themselves and have chosen God. The Nordics are God's chosen people, always looking for more light on the mission of life. Just as Providence has chosen the Jewish race, the children of Israel, to bring into the world righteousness by carrying the Ten Commandments, which emphasize, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, so also Providence has chosen the Nordic race to unfold the new age of the world, a Novus Ordo Seclorum. One of the first of the Nordics to reach the New World was the Viking Leif Erikson. He sailed from Norway to bring to his people in Ireland a new message. The message of the Christian people in Ireland's new message. The message of the Christian God. But Providence moves in a mysterious way, his wonders to perform. And so Leif the Lucky was sent by Providence to the New World. From the abundance of grapes found there, Leif Erikson called the place Vinland. It is easy to sense that Leif Erikson was sent by the guiding hand of Providence to bring the Norse spirit of the All-Father to the shores of the New World. The Nordics are the highest branch of the fifth Aryan civilization. The Latins are of the fourth Aryan civilization, and the American race will be the sixth Aryan civilization. This new and great civilization is like an American beauty rosebud, ready to open and send its wonderful fragrance to all the world. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Thomas Paine, and many others of the founders of the new nation in the New World were Nordics. Thomas Paine, the spark plug of the American Revolution, loved God but hated sectarianism. In These Are the Times, he wrote, "We have it in our power to begin the world all over again. A situation similar to the present hath not happened since the days of Noah till now. The birthday of a new world is at hand." As stated before, God's plan in America is a non-sectarian plan. Our Constitution is non-sectarian. Our great American public schools, God's chosen schools, are non-sectarian. The great spirit behind this great nation is non-sectarian. Our great American public schools have never taken away from any child the freedom of will, freedom of spirit, or freedom of mind. That is the divine reason that great God, our King, has chosen the great American public schools to pave the way for the new race, the new religion, and the new civilization that is taking place in America. Any mother, father, or guardian who is responsible for the taking away of freedom of mind, freedom of will, or freedom of spirit is the lowest criminal on this earth, because they take away from that child the God-given right to become a part of God's great plan in America for the dawn of the new age of the world. End quote. No conspiracy, no plan for a new world order, no movement toward one world religion, one world government. September 1950 and the New Age. Look it up yourself. In the United States Code, annotated. Constitution of the United States, annotated. Amendments 1, 2, 3. Annotations from federal and state courts. Purpose. In interpreting and applying this amendment, purpose of amendment to assure continuation and render possible the effectiveness of the militia must be considered. U.S. versus Miller. Arkansas, 1939, 59, State Court, 816, 307, U.S., 174, 83, Law Edition, 1206. Purpose of this amendment, guaranteeing the right of the people to keep and bear arms, was to preserve the effectiveness and assure the continuation of the state militia. U.S. versus Oaks, C.A., Kansas, 1977, 564, F, 2nd, 384. Certiorari denied. 98, State Court, 1493, 435, U.S., 926, 55, L.Ed., 2nd, 521. The amendment was designed to foster a well-regulated militia as necessary to the security of a free state. Cases versus U.S., CCA, Puerto Rico, 1942, 131, F, 2nd, 916. Certiorari denied. 63, S. Court, 1431, 319, U.S. 770, 87, L. Ed. 1718, rehearing denied. 65, S. Court, 1010, 324, U.S. 889, 89, L. Ed. 1437. The hour, the time is the only place that you get the truth, ladies and gentlemen. It's the only place that you ever learn what's really happening, who's bringing it about, what you should do. And we even tell you where we got it. Collective right of militia is limited to keeping and bearing arms, the possession or use of which has a reasonable relationship to a well-regulated militia. U.S. versus Warren, C.A., Ohio, 1976, 530, F. 2nd, 103. Certiorari denied, 96, S. Court, 3168, 426, U.S., 948, 49, L. ed. 2nd, 1185. Right to bear arms is not an absolute bar to congressional regulation of the use or possession of firearms, and its guarantee extends only to use or possession which has some reasonable relationship to the preservation or efficiency of a well-regulated militia. Cody versus U.S., C.A., Mo. That's Missouri, 1972. 460, F. 2nd, 34. Certiorari, denied, 93. S. Court, 454, 409. U.S., 1010, 34. L. ed. 2nd, 303. See also Burton versus Sills, 1968. 248. A. 2nd, 521. 53. New Jersey, 86. Appeal dismissed, 89. S. Court, 1486, 394. U.S., 812, 22. L. ed. 2nd, 748. Rawlings versus Illinois Department of Law Enforcement, 1979, 391. N.E. 2nd, 758, 29. Illinois, December, 33373. Illinois, appealed, 3rd, 267. Brown versus City of Chicago, 1969, 250. N.E. 2nd, 129, 42. Illinois, 2nd, 501, State versus Skinner, 1973, 203, N.W. 2nd, 161, 189, Nebraska, 457. Next time you see a gun control nut, flash this stuff in his face. I couldn't believe that supposedly intelligent militia leaders went to the Donahue show without the quotes and the backing in the law that they needed to beat that socialist communist puke at his own game. The man who flashed the second article in Amendment to the World and left out the phrase, the right of the people. A person's right to bear arms is guaranteed by this amendment does not extend to pistols or other readily concealable weapons. Rather, that guarantee protects only right to be armed with weapons suitable for use by militia in warfare and for the general defense of the community. Guida versus Deere, 1975, 375, New York, S. 2nd, 826, 84. Miscellaneous 2nd, 110, modified on other grounds, 387, New York, S. 2nd, 720, 54, AD 2nd, 86. The word arms in the connection, we find it in the Constitution of the United States, refers to the arms of a militiaman or soldier, and the word is used in its military sense. The arms of the infantry soldier are the musket and bayonet, of cavalry and dragoons, the saber, holster, pistols, and carbine, of the artillery, the field piece, siege gun, and mortar with sidearms. English versus State, 1872-35, Texas 476. This amendment guarantees a collective rather than an individual right. U.S. versus Warren, C.A., Ohio, 1976, 530, F. 2nd, 103. Certiorari denied, 96. S. Court, 3168, 426, U.S. 948, 49, L. ed. 2nd, 1185. Constitutional right to keep and bear arms applies only to the right of the state to maintain militia and not to individuals' right to bear arms. Stevens versus U.S. C.A., Kentucky, 1971. 440, F. 2nd, 144. See also application of Cassidy, 1944. 51, New York, S. 2nd, 202, 268. Appellate Division, 282. Re-argument denied, 63. NY, S. 2nd, 840, 270. Appellate Division, 1046. Affirmed, 73. NE, 2nd, 41. 296, New York, 926. Com versus Davis, 1976. 343. NE 2nd, 847. 369. Massachusetts, 886. Photos versus City of Toledo, 1969. 250. NE 2nd, 916. 19 Ohio Miscellaneous, 147. Harris versus State, 1967. 432. P 2nd, 929. 83. Nevada, 404. This amendment does not imply any general constitutional right for individuals to bear arms and form private armies. Vietnamese Fishermen's Association versus Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, D.C., Texas, 1982, 543, F, Supplement 198. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand what I'm telling you. You don't have a right to keep a weapon to hunt. You don't have a right to keep a weapon to protect your house. You only have a right guaranteed by the second article in Amendment to keep a right for the protection of the state and the Constitution. The right to keep and bear arms is for the militia. I've been telling you this over and over and over again. You must join a militia or lose your right to keep and bear arms. You must. The militia cannot be restricted on any arms, as you've already heard. You may have a militia of artillery. You may have a militia of armor. You may have a militia of cavalry if you think horses are going to cut the mustard. And you can have an infantry militia. But you must have a militia, or your right to keep and bear arms is in dire jeopardy. The word arms in the connection, we find it in the Constitution of the United States, refers to the arms of a militiaman or soldier. And the word is used in its military sense. The arms of the infantry soldier are the musket and bayonet of cavalry and dragoons, the saber, holster, pistol, and carbine. Of the artillery, the field piece, siege gun, and mortar with sidearms. You must be a legal and lawful militia. If you are not, you will lose your right to keep and bear arms, because this amendment does not apply any general constitutional right for individuals to bear arms and form private armies. There are many, many more cases listed here. Self-defense is not substantive right conferred directly by this amendment, and thus no constitutional right of federal employee was violated by her discharge upon basis of assault incident in which employee claimed to have acted in self-defense. Fields versus Harris, C.A., Missouri, 1982, 675, F. 2nd, 219. Certiorari denied, 103, S. Court, 153, 459, U.S., 869, 74, L. Ed. 2nd, 128. This amendment does not contemplate within its express limitation on powers of the national government granting defendant right to carry two sword-like weapons in his belt for the purposes stated, namely, that he might need them and that he wanted to be prepared. Masters versus State, Texas, Appeal, 3rd District, 1983, 653, S.W. 2nd, 944, affirmed, 685, S.W. 2nd, 654, certiorari denied, 106, S. Court, 155, 88, L. Ed. 2nd, 128. Applicability to state or federal government. Supreme Court has stated that the Second Amendment declares that it shall not be infringed, but this means no more than that it shall not be infringed by Congress. This is one of the amendments that has no other effect than to restrict the powers of the national government. Therefore, right to keep and bear arms under this amendment is not fundamental right which state cannot regulate. Quilici versus Village of Morton Grove, C.A., Illinois, 1982, 695, F. 2nd, 261. Certiorari denied, 104, S. Court, 194, 464, U.S. 863, 78, L. Ed. 2nd, 170. Are you beginning to get the message? I've been trying to teach you, and I look out, and I get letters, and I see what you're doing, and you send me your militia material, and I see that you're nothing but a bunch of children playing games. And you'd better straighten it up real quick. Real quick. Guarantee of right to keep and bear arms under this amendment protects not an individual right, but a collective right in the people as a group to serve as militia, and imposes no limitation on the state legislature's power to prohibit individuals from carrying deadly weapons where the prohibition will not interfere with the preservation of efficiency of the militia. Application of Atkinson, Minnesota, 1980, 291, NW 2nd, 396. Right to bear arms under state constitution or state decisional law is not an absolute right. Right may be circumscribed by conditions under which it is sought to be asserted. U.S. v. Romero, C.A.N.M. 1973, 484, F. 2nd, 1324. See also State v. Rupp, Iowa, 1979, 282, N.W. 2nd, 125. State v. Dawson, 1968, 159, S.E. 2nd, 272. North Carolina, 535. Bristow v. State, Alabama, C.R. Appeals, 1982, 418. S.O. 2nd, 927. This amendment places no limitation on power of state legislators to enact gun control legislation. People v. Morrell, 1984, 475. N.Y.S. 2nd, 648, 101. A.D. 2nd, 927. There is no absolute constitutional right of an individual to possess a firearm. Thompson v. Doretta, D.C., Utah, 1982, 549, F. Sup. 297. Appeal dismissed. 709, F. 2nd, 1343. See also State v. Winkleman, 1981, 442, N.E. 2nd, 811, 2nd, Ohio. App 3rd, 465, 2, O.B.R. 561. Municipal ordinance requiring that persons seeking to possess handgun first obtain identification card in order to demonstrate their entitlement to possess such weapon did not violate this amendment, since it did not infringe upon maintenance of well-regulated militia right which this amendment seeks to protect. Purpose furthered by ordinance of safeguarding public as much as possible from dangers of illegal weapons is proper subject for reasonable regulation under police power. Mosier versus City of Dayton, 1976, 358, N.E. 2nd, 540, 2.0, 3rd, 412, 48, Ohio. State, 2nd, 243. I bet you're paying attention, aren't you? City ordinance prohibiting registration of any handgun after April 10, 1982, unless it was validly registered to current owner in city before April 10th, does not infringe on constitutionally protected right. Sklar versus Byrne, D.C., Illinois, 1983, 556, F. Sup. 736, affirmed, 727, F. 2nd, 633. Even where this amendment is applicable, it does not constitute an absolute barrier to congressional regulation of firearms. U.S. v. Warren, C.A., Ohio, 1976, 530, F. 2nd, 103. Certiorari denied, 96, S. Court, 3168, 426, U.S. 948, 49, L. ed. 2nd, 1185. Regulation of dealers and firearms under Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act, 18 U.S.C.A., Section 921 et sec. Does not infringe on rights under this amendment of people to keep and bear arms, absent a showing that licensing in any way destroys or impairs efficiency of a well-regulated militia. U.S. v. Gross, D.C., Indiana, 1970, 313, F. Sup. 1330, affirmed, 451, F. 2nd, 1355. USCA, Section 5861, under which defendants were convicted of possession of unregistered firearms, did not violate defendants' right to bear arms. U.S. v. Brimley, CA 6, 1976, 529, F. 2nd, 103. National Firearms Act, 26 USCA, LRC 1939, subsection 2720, 2733, 3260, through 3263 did not violate this amendment in absence of showing of any reasonable relationship between such weapons and a well-regulated militia. U.S. v. Miller, Arkansas 1939-59, State Court 1816-307, U.S. 174, 83 L.Ed. 1206. You must have a militia. You must have a militia. This is from the Yearbook of the United Nations, 1978, Volume 32, Department of Public Information, United Nations, New York. On page 46, under Political and Security Questions, paragraph 109. Implementation of these priorities should lead to general and complete disarmament under effective international control, which remains the ultimate goal of all efforts exerted in the field of disarmament. Negotiations on general and complete disarmament shall be conducted concurrently with negotiations on partial measures of disarmament. With this purpose in mind, the Committee on Disarmament will undertake the elaboration of a comprehensive program of disarmament encompassing all measures thought to be advisable in order to ensure that the goal of general and complete disarmament under effective international control becomes a reality. In a world in which international peace and security prevail, and in which the new international economic order is strengthened and consolidated, the comprehensive program should contain appropriate procedures for ensuring that the General Assembly is kept fully informed of the progress of the negotiations, including an appraisal of the situation when appropriate, and in particular, a continuing review of the implementation of the program. Paragraph 110. Progress in disarmament should be accompanied by measures to strengthen institutions for maintaining peace and the settlement of international disputes by peaceful means. During and after the implementation of the program of general and complete disarmament, there should be taken, in accordance with the principles of the Charter of the United Nations, the necessary measures to maintain international peace and security, including the obligation of states to place at the disposal of the United Nations agreed manpower necessary for an international peacekeeping force to be equipped with agreed types of armaments. Arrangements for the use of this force should ensure that the United Nations can effectively deter or suppress any threat or use of arms in violation of the purposes and principles of the United Nations. Paragraph 111. General and complete disarmament under strict and effective international control shall permit states to have at their disposal only those non-nuclear forces, armaments, facilities, and establishments as are agreed to be necessary to maintain internal order and protect the personal security of citizens, and in order that states shall support and provide agreed manpower for a United Nations peace force. Under paragraph 115. The General Assembly has been and should remain the main deliberative organ of the United Nations in the field of disarmament, and should make every effort to facilitate the implementation of disarmament measures. An item entitled Review of the Implementation of the Recommendations and Decisions Adopted by the General Assembly at its 10th Special Session shall be included in the provisional agenda of the 33rd and subsequent sessions of the General Assembly. Paragraph 120. The General Assembly is conscious of the work that has been done by the international negotiating body that has been meeting since 14 March 1962, as well as the considerable and urgent work that remains to be accomplished in the field of disarmament, and on, and on, and on. Paragraph 126. In adopting this final document, the states members of the United Nations solemnly reaffirm their determination to work for general and complete disarmament and to make further collective efforts aimed at strengthening peace and international security, eliminating the threat of war, particularly nuclear war, implementing practical measures aimed at halting and reversing the arms race, strengthening the procedures for the peaceful settlement of disputes, and reducing military expenditures and utilizing the resources thus released in a manner which will help to promote the well-being of all peoples and to improve the economic conditions of the developing countries. And on, and on. It talks about the new phase in disarmament. And here we have on page 113. Liberia submitted to the First Committee in 1978 a draft resolution on the need for a new philosophy on disarmament. to be formulated from the new ideas, theories, proposals, and strategies set forth at the General Assembly's 10th Special and Current Sessions. Liberia envisions the new philosophy as an organized departure from outmoded premises into a system for mobilizing world public opinion. In other words, propaganda, which could make possible a popular grasp of the nature of the disarmament problem and United Nations goals on disarmament. Introducing the text, Liberius suggested that all the new ideas and concepts on disarmament should be fused into a single principle of an integrated philosophy, perhaps as a new world disarmament order. Its format perhaps as a doctrine or as a philosophical declaration. And down below that, final document of the 10th Special Session be formulated into a single, comprehensive, and coordinated system, into a new philosophy on disarmament, and a message that could effectively reach the minds of men, and a mobilization of world public opinion in support of the United Nations goal for halting the arms race, and eventually for complete and general disarmament, centered on a new order of national and international security. On page 121, on 30 June 1978, at the 10th Special Session, the General Assembly decided to establish a disarmament commission composed of all member states of the United Nations. The commission was asked to report on organizational matters to the Assembly's regular 1978 session. What's wrong with this, folks? You say I'm against peace in the world? Not on your life. You say I'm against world government? No, not if it's done properly. We've been lied to. We've been deceived. We've been manipulated. We've been scammed. Our nation has been stolen out from under us. There are no protections for individual rights in the United Nations Charter or in any of the resolutions passed by the United Nations since its inception. If you take the UN Charter and put it side by side with the old Soviet Constitution, they are the same. The man most responsible for writing the United Nations Charter, ladies and gentlemen, was found to be a communist spy, was tried, convicted, and placed where he belongs, in jail. Who was that? You go dig it out. And the supreme law of the land, ladies and gentlemen, the United States Code annotated, Constitution of the United States annotated, Articles 2 to 7, annotations from federal and state courts. Listen carefully to what I'm telling you. For all of you who have not believed what I've been putting out as the message to this nation and to the world, you had better listen. Once again, United States Code annotated, Constitution of the United States annotated, Articles 2 to 7, annotations from federal and state courts. On page 576, paragraph 112, United Nations Charter. United Nations Charter, a treaty ratified by the United States, is part of the supreme law of this land. U.S. versus Steinberg, D.C., Illinois, 1976, 478, F. Sup. 29. See also Balfour, Guthrie and Company, Limited versus U.S., D.C., Cal, 1950, 90, F. Sup. 831. Provision of United States Nations Charter, that's United Nations Charter, that United Nations should promote universal respect for observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms for all, without distinction as to race, sex, language, or religion, was not self-executing and therefore was not part of the supreme law of the United States. Do you understand what I'm saying? Camacho versus Rogers, D.C., New York, 1961, 199, F. Sup. 155. The United Nations Charter is a treaty within the purview of this clause, making treaties a part of the supreme law of the land and binding upon judges in every state. Fujii versus State, 1952, 242. P. 2nd, 617, 38. Cal. 2nd, 718. You can listen to all the other programs you want to. You can read anything you want to, but you better come back every night at this same time and listen to the Hour of the Time, because that's the only way you're ever going to grow up. You get pablum from everyone else. And I have to spoon feed you because you can't get it any other way. 583, paragraph 144, police power enactments. Police power of state, especially when exerted for protection of life and limb, is as pervasive as any of reserved powers of states and should be respected unless there is a clear collision with national law, which has right of way under this clause. Kessler versus Department of Public Safety, Financial Responsibility Division, State of Utah, Utah 1962, 82 S. Court 807, 369, U.S. 153, 7 L. Ed. 2nd, 641. In the application of this principle of supremacy of an act of Congress in a case where the state law is but the exercise of a reserved power, the repugnance or conflict should be direct and positive, so that the two acts could not be reconciled or consistently stand together, and also that the act of Congress should have been passed in the exercise of a clear power under the Constitution, such as that in question, Synott versus Davenport, Alabama, 1859, 63, U.S. 227, 22, Howe, 227, 16, L. Ed. 243. Treaty conflicts generally, 154, paragraph 154 on page 589. Treaty conflicts generally. State law must yield when it is inconsistent with or impairs the policy or provisions of a treaty or of an international compact or agreement. U.S. versus Pink, New York, 1942, 62, S. Court, 552, 315, U.S. 203, 86, L. Ed. 796. See also in re. Ostrowski's Estate, 1936, 290. New York State, 174, 160, miscellaneous 482, State versus Arthur, 1953, 261, P. 2nd, 135, 74, Idaho, 251. The treaty-making power has been surrendered by the states and given to the United States, and treaties are as binding within the territorial limits of the states as they are elsewhere throughout the domain of the United States. Baldwin versus Franks, Cal, 1887, 7 S. Court, 656, 763, 120, U.S. 682, 30, L. Ed. 766. See also Nielsen versus Johnson, Iowa, 1929, 49, S. Court, 223, 279, U.S. 47, 73, L. Ed. 607, Majorano versus Baltimore, etc. And there's two more paragraphs of citations which I'm not going to read. You can look it up. It is the declared will of the people of the United States that every treaty made by the authority of the United States shall be superior to the Constitution and laws of any individual state. Ware versus Hileton, Virginia, that's Virginia, 1796. 3 U.S. 199. 3 Dahl, 199. 1 L. Ed. 568. See also N. Re. Wyman, 1906. 77. N. E. 379. 191 Massachusetts. 276. 114. M. St. Rep. 601. State statutory provisions yields to any applicable provision of any valid treaty of the United States with foreign country, since treaties constitute part of supreme law of the land. D. Tenorio versus McGowan, C.A. Miss, 1975, 510, F. 2nd, 92, rehearing denied, 513, F. 2nd, 294. Certiorari denied, 96, S. Court, 150, 423, U.S. 877, 46, L. Ed. 2nd, 110. A treaty must be regarded as a part of the law of an individual state as much as are the state's own statutes, and it may override the power of state even in respect of the great body of private relations which usually fall within control of the state. Amaya versus Stanalind Oil and Gas Company, CCA Tex 1947, 158 F. 2nd, 554, certiorari denied, 67, S. Court 1191, 331, U.S. 808, 91, L. ed. 1828, rehearing denied, 67, S. Court 1530, 331, U.S. 867, 91, L. ed. 1871. A treaty is supreme law of the land, and even state law must yield when it is inconsistent with or impairs policy or provisions of a treaty. Oregon Pacific Forest Products Corporation versus Welsh Panel Company, D.C., or 1965, 248 F. Sup. 903. You see, when I've been telling you that we don't exist as a country anymore, the Constitution is not in effect. Anywhere that it conflicts with the United Nations Charter, under the United Nations Treaty, and the United Nations Participation Act, the United Nations will prevail. We are a vassal state of a world government and have been since 1945. State cannot attempt to exercise jurisdiction if to do so would violate an international treaty. Shoei Keiko Company Limited versus Superior Court for City and County of San Francisco, 1973, 109, Cal, Repter 402, 33, CA, 3rd, 808. A duly executed treaty is the supreme law of the land, and state and local laws must yield to its provisions. Republic of Finland versus Town of Pelham, 1966, 270. NY, S, 2nd, 661, 26, AD, 2nd, 35. States are bound by this clause to respect the terms of treaties entered into by Congress. State versus Miller, 1984, 689. P, 2nd, 81, 102, Washington, 2nd, 678. State laws must yield to valid treaties where there is a conflict between them, and even laws governing essentially local matters must bow when treaty provisions override them. Wires versus Arnold, 1941, 147, SW, 2nd, 644, 347, Missouri, 413, certiorari denied, 61, S. Court, 1112, 313, U.S. 589, 85, L. ed. 1544. Page 591, paragraph 172, sovereign immunity generally. The federal government, its agencies, and instrumentalities have general sovereign immunity under this clause from state or local control of governmental functions. Mon versus U.S. CA Cal 1965, 347 F. 2nd, 970. Implied federal governmental immunity from state regulation extends to the performance of governmental activities or functions by federal instrumentalities, federal officers and agents. Beauregard Elect Co-op Incorporated versus Louisiana Public Service Commission, LA 1979, 378, SO 2nd, 404. And on and on and on. I could cite cases all night in front of this microphone showing you what I am talking about and what I have been trying to tell you and what you have been ignoring for years. Basic documents in international law and world order. Listen to this. Basic documents in international law and world order. Burns H. Weston, Richard A. Falk, Anthony A. Diamato. Page 138, paragraph 2.25. Final Act of the United Nations General Assembly Special Session on Disarmament, adopted by consensus on June 30th, 1978. Adopts the following final document of this special session of the General Assembly devoted to disarmament. Ladies and gentlemen, you can look it up. We're out of time. We'll continue this tomorrow night, if I'm still alive. Good night. God bless each and every one of you. And God save this republic. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. Folks, in New Mexico, there's an interesting scenario beginning to unravel, and I'm going to tell you about it right now. You see, there's a courtroom in the state of New Mexico where the United Nations flag shares space with the New Mexico and United States flags in Judge Benjamin Eastburn's courtroom. You see, the judge knows what I know, and he says he ain't taking it out. How about that? What have you got to say about it? In Aztec, New Mexico, about a dozen people carrying United States and New Mexico flags and picket signs marched in front of the county's judicial complex Friday afternoon, protesting a United Nations flag hanging in District Judge Benjamin Eastburn's court. The group marched peacefully outside the complex for about 30 minutes. Harvey Sills of Aztec said the protesters were not from any formal organization, just a group of concerned citizens opposed to what the United Nations flag represents. We don't approve of the UN flag or what it stands for. One world order, Sills said. The flag was a sign of the encroachment of world order ideas in the United States and of the erosion of individual rights in this country, he said. Eventually, they'll take the whole world over. They're chipping away at our rights, and we want to protect what's left, Sills said. The court complex was paid for with taxpayers' money, and as such belongs to the taxpayers, he added. We don't like the United Nations flag flying over our complex. Old Glory is good enough for us. The protesters carried signs that called for Eastburn to remove the United Nations flag and included a number of epithets regarding the judge himself. Among the slogans were, Eastburn, take your un-American flag home, and no communism, no socialism, no one world order. Others said Eastburn was showing his true colors and called the United Nations flag a symbol of slavery. Eastburn did not comment on the representations made by the protesters, but did say the flag would not be removed. You figure. If you've been listening, well, I'm sitting here drinking a glass of ice orange juice, or orange juice and ice, or some orange juice that turned to ice or something, and it's got my tongue all messed up, folks. If you've been listening for the last several nights, you know a few things by now. You know, number one, according to treaty, the United Nations is the law of the land. Not the Constitution as you've always thought, but the United Nations. And I cited the law to you. You also heard that your rights are not protected as you thought they were. There is no protection at all, in fact, for individual rights in the United Nations Charter or the resolutions that they've passed. Also, the part in the UN Charter and in the UN resolutions calling for equality of race, religion, and creed and all of that kind of stuff, guaranteeing you that you will not be discriminated against, was not automatically empowered and therefore does not apply. I read you that. I also read you where the courts are now interpreting the second article in amendment to mean you have the right to keep and bear arms only if you are in a militia. And many, many, many others. I explained to you that the Department of the Treasury is not an agency of the United States government, but is in fact an international organization under the United Nations. The Secretary of the Treasury is paid by the International Monetary Fund and the BATF, or Bureau of Alcohol, Tobaccos, and Firearms, and the Secret Service and customs agents which, by the way, Lars Hansen was a customs agent. Could never figure out where he was coming from until we discovered that little fact. Also, he was a member of the Stell Group, along with Tom Valentine, where they came to know each other. And many, many other magnificent little tidbits of information have been put out to you, folks. What you have discovered is that these international police forces, because that's what they are immune from all the laws of the United States. Yes, that includes the BATF, the Secret Service, customs agents, and many, many more. I also advised you that there is a multi-jurisdictional task force, if you will, called MFO in international jargon, which is made up of law enforcement and military forces of several different nations, which can go anywhere it pleases and do whatever it pleases, and is exempt from the laws of the United States of America. How about that? I've outlined to you the entire program of disarmament of the world, including the United States and its people, in the law. And I've cited the law to you so that there is no misunderstanding, and not one single one of you can claim that I made it up. You see, ladies and gentlemen, we've been a part of world government for a long time now. You just didn't know it. The American people had to be brought into this slowly through a program of indoctrination, propaganda, lies, deceit, and manipulation. You are being taught that because there are holes in the ozone layer, there must be an international body to guard the atmosphere against the assault of humanity. And you are told that because we use CFCs in our air conditioners and our refrigerators, these holes are getting bigger, and the sun, the ultraviolet light, is streaming down through these holes and is roasting you where you stand, causing a great increase in the amount of skin cancer. And it's a lie. It's just one of the many manipulations, ladies and gentlemen. The reason it's a lie, as any high school physics or chemistry book will tell you, is that ozone does not protect you from ultraviolet light. And a lack of ozone does not allow huge amounts of ultraviolet light to come down that normally is not here and fry you inside your skin and give you cancer. No. Because as these very elemental textbooks will tell you, ozone is created by ultraviolet light. You see, as ultraviolet light comes through the Earth's atmosphere from the sun, it encounters molecules of oxygen. The ultraviolet light is decreased in its energy and in its concentration as it causes this molecule to split into two individual atoms called ions of oxygen. These seek something to attach themselves to because they're what's called radicals. Ions are radical. As soon as they find another molecule of O2 or oxygen, they attach themselves, and that molecule then becomes ozone, or O3. Haven't you ever wondered why every photograph of an ozone hole is over one or the other of the poles, the Earth's poles? Always, when that particular pole is experiencing its winter months. It's very simple, folks. You see, these are not ozone holes. These are not places where the ozone has been destroyed and thus has caused a hole in the atmosphere where ultraviolet light is streaming through and frying humans. No, not at all. Due to the tilt of the Earth on its axis, these are areas in the Earth's atmosphere that while that particular pole is experiencing its winter months, that portion of the atmosphere is away from the sun. No ultraviolet light hits that portion of the atmosphere, and thus this reaction simply does not take place. There is no ozone created. How about that? Another scam courtesy of the socialist New World Order. A blatant lie. Mankind in its entire history has never created enough CFCs, ladies and gentlemen, to cause any damage to any portion of any of the ozone in the atmosphere, simply because the molecule of CFCs is too heavy to get up there. It is really the chlorine that causes ozone to deplete. But since ozone is constantly being manufactured as sunlight streams into the atmosphere, and since ozone ions, or ozone molecules, have a radical ion attached to them, ozone doesn't last very long anyway. It's constantly being destroyed and created and destroyed and created all the time. How about that? Isn't that amazing? I wonder how many of you fell for that scam and were saying, oh, we've got to do something about the ozone layer. Oh, we need an international organization to make sure that people in these other countries don't use CFCs and pollute the atmosphere and destroy the ozone because we're all going to fry where we stand. Huh? Not you? Baloney. The Council on Foreign Relations is not involved in this, huh? According to Rush Limbaugh, the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission are not involved in any attempt to destroy the sovereignty of the United States of America and bring about one world government. A blatant lie. Blatant. You see? Because if you will get the publication, which is the periodical of the Council on Foreign Relations, the name of it is Foreign Relations. For April 1974, the publication called Foreign Relations, April 1974. The lead article is called Hard Road to World Order. Hard Road to World Order. And in that article, ladies and gentlemen, they outline the blueprint on how they intend to destroy the sovereignty of the United States of America and make world government possible. You can discover the same thing in the periodicals and the publications of the Trilateral Commission, and if you write to either one of these organizations, they will send you a list of their members, and you can see exactly who they are. A list of their publications. You can subscribe to Foreign Relations, which I have been doing for years, and we have Foreign Relations on the shelves in our library back here, and I have a whole bunch of them at home, because you see, I learned a long time ago, you must understand the enemy if you're going to fight him. I meet many of you every day who say, oh, I can't read that stuff. It's from Satan. Well, I guarantee it was a man that wrote it, not Satan. And what's happening on this earth is being brought about by men who have a racial agenda and a religious agenda and a social agenda, all of which is the antithesis to the principles and ideals upon which this country was based. In an address in New York City before the United Nations on October 24, 1950, Harry S. Truman said this: 5 years ago today, the Charter of the United Nations came into force. By virtue of that event, October 24, 1945 became a great day in the history of the world, a great day in the history of the world. Long before that day, the idea of an association of nations to keep the peace had lived as a dream in the hearts and minds of men. Woodrow Wilson was the author of that idea in our time. The organization that was brought into being on October the 24th, 1945, represents our greatest advance toward making that dream a reality. The United Nations represents the idea of a universal morality, superior to the interests of individual nations. Its foundation does not rest upon power or privilege. It rests upon faith. They rest upon the faith of men in human values, upon the belief that men in every land hold the same high ideals and strive toward the same goals for peace and justice. That's really strange, folks. You see, I've been all over the world. I've been in many foreign nations, and that just isn't true. Not only is it not true, it's not even close to being true. In fact, it's so far from the truth that it's pathetic, and it's beyond my understanding how a president of the United States could have ever made such a statement. He goes on, that's just the beginning. Many of you who fought in the Korean War will love this statement made by Harry S. Truman, the great traitor who signed the United Nations Treaty, pushed through the UN Participation Act, and made us a vassal state of the United Nations, and then lied to the American people. But he did not lie to the United Nations. Listen to this. In past broadcasts of the Hour of the Time, I have told you that the Korean War was not about saving the Korean people or saving democracy in South Korea. It was about building democracy for the world, and remember, democracy is a code word for socialism. It was about empowering the United Nations. Listen to this statement by Harry S. Truman, made in 1950. He confirms exactly what I've been telling you. In fact, this is going to make some of you angry. Quote, "The men who laid down their lives for the United Nations in Korea will have a place in our memory and in the memory of the world forever. They died in order that the United Nations might live." End quote. Now, that ought to fill some bar stools down at the local VFW hall tonight, don't you think? And he further says, to do so, the United Nations must be prepared to use force. The United Nations did use force to curb aggression in Korea, and by so doing has greatly strengthened the cause of peace. I am glad that additional steps are being taken at this session to prepare for quick and effective actions in the future case of aggression. He says, if real disarmament were achieved, the nations of the world, acting through the United Nations, can join in a greatly enlarged program of mutual aid to support the United Nations. In this way, our armaments would be transformed into foods, medicines, tools for use in underdeveloped areas, and into other aids for human advancement. The latest discoveries of science could be made available to men all over the globe. Thus we could give real meaning to the old promise that swords shall be beaten into plowshares and that nations shall not learn war anymore. The President spoke at 11:30 a.m. in New York City. In his opening words, he referred to Nasrullah Intizam, President of the General Assembly, and Try-Givlai, Secretary General of the United Nations, and the address was carried on a nationwide radio broadcast, which probably no one remembers. In the Yearbook of the United Nations for 1980, Volume 34, Department of Public Information, United Nations, New York, on page 102, Annex, Declaration of the 1980s as the Second Disarmament Decade. You guys didn't even know what was going on, did you? You've been scammed so long, folks. I'm telling you, you've been living in Disneyland. You have no conception of the real world. You keep talking as if this country still has sovereignty and exists on its own. You still keep talking about the Constitution. You see, folks, I got faxes and letters and all kinds of stuff saying that what I told you last night was erroneous, that treaties do not supersede the Constitution, that the second article and amendment guarantees the right to keep and bear arms for all Americans, regardless of whether they're in the militia or not. You people are not playing with a full deck of cards, unfortunately. I wish you were right. Of course, you're right in the intent of the law and in the intent of our founding fathers, and you're right in the early court rulings on these issues. But, folks, we have to deal with reality, and what I'm telling you is reality. What I read you last night were actual court rulings. You see, they flopped everything 180 degrees. And it doesn't matter what you think, and it doesn't matter when you're in that courtroom if you stand before the judge and rail against him about how they can't do it
You're full of crap. They've already done it. It's a done deal. You can yell and scream all you want. You can tell the judge that he can't tell you that you can't have a rifle or a pistol because the second article and amendment guarantees you that right, and it's meant for all the people, whether they're in the militia or not. You're going to make the judge angry, and you're going to go to jail because the judge don't care. You see, they've taken over this country. They've flopped everything 180 degrees. They've made right wrong and wrong right. And while I agree with you on the principles, you are wrong in the reality of the situation. And you cannot afford to be wrong today. We must restore the Constitution because it is not in effect, and you better get that through your thick heads. We are under United Nations international law right this moment, and have been since 1945. For many years, nobody saw any results of this because they had to promote a huge brainwashing and propaganda campaign against the American people to get them to accept it. Part of that is what's known as the New Age movement. Part of that is the ozone holes. Part of it is global warming. Part of it is pollution, environmental destruction, done on purpose to create this cry for international control. Read the report from Iron Mountain. The report from Iron Mountain. The possibility and probability of permanent peace. All of these things were outlined in that book as contingency plans to bring about world government and do away with wars forever. Do you really think that the United States government built a Holocaust museum in this nation because a minority of the population wanted it? They built it to make war look so horrible, to make anti-Semitism a political tool. Doesn't matter whether you're Jew, Gentile, black, white, green, purple, Oriental, Christian, Jew, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu. These are all tools to bring about world government. And folks, the average Jewish person has no more knowledge about any of this than you did before I told you. They are tools, pawns in the game, if you will, puppets on the end of strings, just like you are. So get off their back. At the highest levels, the people involved in this are from all the different spectrums, races, and religions. Most of them belong to the secret societies that are known collectively as the Illuminati. And yes, there is a racial agenda, and all of them have bought into it in one form or another. Even the blacks. And that's pathetic. There are four forces at work in the world to bring about world government. One is international Zionism. One is French Freemasonry, by whatever name it goes by. You see, the lodge does not have to be a Freemasonic lodge to be a part of this. One is British Freemasonry, also known as British Israelism. Are you with me? And the other one, folks, is the Vatican. Now, two of these elements always take sides with one or the other. The Vatican, for some reason, always sides with communism. And international Zionism, for some reason, always sides with British Israelism. Communism is the result of French Freemasonry, and British Israelism is the result of British Freemasonry. These two elements are at war constantly, trying to gain power and wealth and seat their Messiah upon the throne of the world. Now that sounds pretty far-fetched until you get into the depths of study to which I have participated. And you will find that the occult controls both sides of this, that they're moving all of the religions of the world into one world humanist religion, wherein man becomes God. And you can watch your favorite preachers on Sunday morning on television, or at any time during the day or night if you have a satellite dish and can tune into these Christian channels. Listen to them. Pat Robertson. What's that guy, Paul? Robert Schuller. Jerry Falwell. Zionist through and through. And folks, Zionism has absolutely nothing to do at the globalist level with the state of Israel in any other manner than using it as a tool to bring about world government. And you'd better understand that right now. Political and security questions in the 1980 United Nations Yearbook. Goals and principles. The goals of the second disarmament decade should be conceived in the context of the ultimate objective of the efforts of states in the disarmament process, which is general and complete disarmament under effective international control as elaborated in the final document. Everybody in Washington, D.C. knows what I've been telling you for the last few nights, and you've learned more in the last few nights than you will learn in your entire lifetime listening to anybody else. They all know it. Yep, even old Newt. Even old Bob Dole. That's why they lied to you. Get you feeling secure. Oh, Gatt's not going to pass. Dole's against it. The Republicans won't let it pass. But it passed, didn't it? It passed because it had to pass. Because it takes us further into world government. Because that's where we're going. You didn't even know it, but Gatt's been around since the late 40s. That's right, folks. It wasn't new. Not at all. And there are so many thousands of pages, it establishes, in effect, a superior power to the United States which can dictate to us. And just as the United States federal government took the sovereignty away from the states and the individuals through its power granted by the Constitution over interstate commerce, so will this world government take the sovereignty from the nations and the individual citizens of the nations through international commerce under NAFTA and GATT.
And for those of you who may have missed it last night, I'm going to read this again. This article was originally published in The New Age, the official publication of International Freemasonry, in September of 1950. It was authored by Masonic scholar C. William Smith. And it's the truth as close as you're ever going to hear it from their lips, and they very seldom make these kinds of slips, although every time they have throughout their history, I have been able to locate it and document it and deliver their own words from their own mouth over these airways. You'll notice since I began this week's programming, revealing to you for the first time the truth, documented in such magnitude that no one can challenge it ever, that we've been jammed every night. You must start calling your congressmen and senators, the FCC and WWCR, and force them to stop the jamming. But here's the article. God's plan is dedicated to the unification of all races, religions, and creeds. This plan, dedicated to the new order of things, is to make all things new. A new nation, a new race, a new civilization, and a new religion, a non-sectarian religion that has already been recognized and called the religion of the Great Light. Now that's the first paragraph. They told some truth in that paragraph, and they told some lies, as you will hear if you are listening carefully to the rest of this article. You see, it sounds good when they say God's plan is dedicated to the unification of all races, religions, and creeds. First place, they don't tell you which God. And in the second place, it's a lie. Listen to this. Looking back into history, we can easily see that the guiding hand of providence has chosen the Nordic people to bring in and unfold the new order of the world. Sounds racist to me. How about you? Been telling you all along this has a racial agenda. He goes on, records clearly show that 95% of the colonists were Nordics, Anglo-Saxons. So what? This is 1995. And he goes on, providence has chosen the Nordics because the Nordics have prepared themselves and have chosen God. More bullshit, folks. They want you to think it's the same God that you worship in the Bible. Their God is Lucifer, and they believe in the Luciferian philosophy, that Adam and Eve were held prisoners in the Garden of Eden. They were set free from the chains of ignorance by the gift of intellect from Satan, Lucifer. And through the use of this gift of intellect, man himself will become God. They may have fooled themselves, but they sure haven't fooled me. They go on to say the Nordics are God's chosen people, always looking for more light on the mission of life. Just as providence has chosen the Jewish race, the children of Israel, to bring into the world righteousness by carrying the 10 Commandments, which emphasize, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, so also providence has chosen the Nordic race to unfold the new age of the world, a novus ordo seclorum. Now notice here they've given themselves away. See, on the one hand, they claim to be the true Israelites, yet they specifically state here that the 10 Commandments were given to the Jewish race, which is not the Nordic. They always slip like this because they're so arrogant that they think the rest of us are too stupid to figure it out. Novus ordo seclorum means a secular world order without religion. Understand that? Without God. Secular is worldly, of the material world. If you have relatives in any of these secret societies, by whatever name, you had better get them out of it. Because someday soon, patriots are going to simply kick their butts for what they've done to destroy this nation. With their lies and their deceit. He goes on to say one of the first of the Nordics to reach the New World was the Viking, Leif Erikson. He sailed from Norway to bring his people in Ireland a new message, the message of the Christian God. But providence moves in a mysterious way, his wonders to perform, and so Leif the Lucky was sent by providence to the New World. From the abundance of grapes found there, Leif Erikson called the place Vinland. It is easy to sense that Leif Erikson was sent by the guiding hand of providence to bring the Norse spirit of the All-Father to the shores of the New World. The Norse All-Father, ladies and gentlemen, is not the God of the Bible. And where Leif Erikson may have been trying to take the message of the Christian God to Ireland, I sincerely doubt it, because Christianity was in Ireland long before it was in Norway. Long before it ever reached Norway. He goes on to say the Nordics are the highest branch, and listen to this, are the highest branch of the 5th Aryan civilization, right out of the New Age textbooks. They say the Latins are of the 4th Aryan civilization, And the American race will be the 6th Aryan civilization. Boy, Blavatsky would be proud. She would be so proud to learn that her Aryan scam actually took root in the minds of these kindergarten humans. He goes on to say, this new and great civilization is like an American beauty rosebud ready to open and send its wonderful fragrance to all the world. I've already told you that the symbol, one red rose, is the symbol of international socialism, ladies and gentlemen. Communism, if you will. Also, we've learned through the first-hand testimony of several officers who have been Delta Force officers that it is an absolute requirement that you must be a 32nd degree Freemason or higher to be an officer in Delta Force since its inception. And when they were assigned their first headquarters, a rose garden was planted in honor of Colonel Beckwith's special love for the red rose. Lieutenant Colonel James Bobo Gritz was a member of Delta Force, in fact, a commander of Delta Force. In Freedom Call 90 in Las Vegas, I sat in the audience when he gave his talk, and he said, and I quote verbatim from his lips, "I am a 32nd degree Freemason of the Scottish Rite," end quote. William Smith continues in this article, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Thomas Paine, and many others of the founders of the new nation in the New World were Nordics. Thomas Paine, the spark plug of the American Revolution, loved God but hated sectarianism. In these are the times, he wrote, we have it in our power to begin the world all over again. A situation similar to the present hath not happened since the days of Noah till now. The birthday of a new world is at hand. Now, they're going to try to tell you, folks, that the Nordics are the English peoples, the Anglo-Aryan peoples. The Nordics, if you study your history, were the northern Europeans that came from the frozen lands in the winter, the Vikings who raided the shores of England and the other, I guess in that day you would have called them civilized nations, even though compared to our day they were very, very little civilized. He goes on to say, as stated before, God's plan in America is a non-sectarian plan. Well, it depends upon who you are and what you believe, doesn't it? If you're a Christian, and if God sent Jesus Christ to establish a church in this world, then God's plan was not sectarian. If you belong to the religion of Muhammad, if you are a Muslim or any one of the different races or nationalities that belong or follow the Prophet Muhammad, you certainly don't believe that because your religion is one of the most sectarian in the world. So whose God are they talking about here? Not most people's God. They're talking about their God. And Albert Pike made it very clear. Christopher Albert Pike, in his book called Morals and Dogma, stated clearly that their God is Lucifer. In one prominent church in the United States, it is said that Jesus and Lucifer were brothers. Jesus had his chance. Now it's Lucifer's turn. Of course, they don't say that publicly. You have to get in their secret rites in the temple and in their writings to discover that. They also believe that when you die, you're given your own planet And you and your wife, if you were good members of your church, you become gods and populate your planet with souls through eternal celestial intercourse. I swear, folks, I do not know where you get your brains, because most Woolworths went out of business a long time ago. Sears closed all their rural facilities, so there must be some traveling brain salesman running around selling you your stupidity. If you see the guy, tell him to stay away from St. John's, Arizona. Please. He goes on to say, our great American public schools have never taken away from any child the freedom of will, freedom of spirit, or freedom of mind. That is the divine reason that great God, our King, has chosen the great American public schools to pave the way for the new race, the new religion, and the new civilization that is taking place in America. Hallelujah. I can't believe they're taking credit for the disaster that is our public school system that's turning out idiots who can't spell their name. But maybe that's God's great plan for America. You see, folks, the whole idea for public schools run by the government came out of the lodges of Freemasonry, and they have publicly taken credit for that. And the purpose of it was to dumb down the children of America so they would not know what was happening to them. So they would not challenge the new sectarian order, the Novus Ordo Seclorum. And he continues, any mother, father, or guardian who is responsible for the taking away of freedom of mind, freedom of will, or freedom of spirit is the lowest criminal on this earth. Because they take away from that child the God-given right to become a part of God's great plan in America for the dawn of the new age of the world. End quote. In other words, don't teach your children anything. Don't teach them morals. Don't teach them right from wrong. And for God's sake, don't discipline them. And that's where all of this stuff comes from. Right out of the lodges of the ancient order, the Rose and Cross, Freemasonry in all its various forms, the Ordo Templi Orientalis, the Golden Dawn. I could go on and on and on and on. Rosicrucianism, the Knights of Pythias, the ancient and military order of the Knights of Malta, the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem. You've been looking around for an enemy, ladies and gentlemen, and they've been in your house, sitting at your own table all this time. The Illuminati have been in control of these so-called fraternal brotherhoods since their inception. Their goal has always been the same, to destroy all existing nation-states, all existing religions, and to chain the mob, and that is you. They have all this flowering speech that's supposed to lull you into accepting it, and most of you do, without question, because you're stupid. Executive Order number 12425. Of June 16th, 1983, signed by your hero, Ronald Reagan, the man who spent more money in 8 years than the entire United States government ever spent collectively in its entire history. It's entitled International Criminal Police Organizations. By virtue of the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and statutes of the United States, including Section 1 of the International Organizations Immunities Act, 59 Statute 669-22, United States Code 288, it is hereby ordered that the International Criminal Police Organization, Interpol, in which the United States participates pursuant to 22 United States Code 263A is hereby designated as a public international organization entitled to enjoy the privileges, exemptions, and immunities conferred by the International Organizations Immunities Act. Signed, Ronald Reagan, the White House, June 16, 1983. Executive Order 12359 of April 22, 1982. Public international organizations entitled to enjoy privileges, exemptions, and immunities. By the authority vested in me as President of the United States of America by Section 1 of the International Organizations Immunities Act, and having found that the United States participates in the following organizations, it is hereby ordered as follows. Section 1. The multinational force and observers in which the United States participates pursuant to Section 138 of Public Law 97-51 and Public Law 97-132 is hereby designated as a public international organization entitled to enjoy the privileges, exemptions, and immunities. There's much, much more. Much more. Public Law 97-132 says in one paragraph, two paragraphs, premises of the MFO. Without prejudice to the fact that all the premises of the MFO remain the territory of the receiving state, they shall be inviolable and subject to the exclusive control and authority of the Director General, who alone may consent to the entry of officials to perform duty on such premises. You wonder where these multi-jurisdictional task forces come from? How all of a sudden there's jurisdiction where the Constitution forbids it? They are international forces. The insurrection is over. You may be prisoners of war tomorrow. MFO flag. The receiving states permit the MFO to display a special flag or insignia of a design agreed upon by them on its headquarters, camps, posts, or other premises, vehicles, boats, and otherwise, as decided by the Director General. Director General? Who's that? United Nations. Public Law 97-132, privileges and immunities of the MFO. The MFO shall enjoy the status, privileges, and immunities accorded in Article 2 of the Convention on the Privileges and Immunities of the United Nations hereinafter the Convention. The provisions of Article 2 of the Convention shall also apply to the property, funds, and assets of participating states used in the receiving state in connection with the activities of the MFO. During the fire in Waco, when the children and the women and the men and boys of the Branch Davidians were burning to death, the people who you thought were United States agents of the federal government were seen with their hands in the air bowing to the flames. For in the secret societies they are known as the philosophers of fire, and they always burn their enemies, or they bleed them in an act of blood atonement. It says in paragraph 30 on page 17, the MFO shall also enjoy within the areas where it is functioning the right of unrestricted communication by radio, telephone, telegraph, or any other means, and of establishing the necessary facilities for maintaining such communications within or between the premises of the MFO. It says the government of the receiving states recognize the right of the MFO to make arrangements through its own facilities for the processing and transport of private mail addressed to or emanating from members of the MFO. Such mail is inviolable. When the MFO uses roads, bridges, port facilities, and airfields, it shall not be subject to payment of dues, tolls, or charges, either by way of registration or otherwise. The MFO shall have the right to the use of water, electricity, and other public utilities at rates not less favorable to the MFO than those of comparable consumers. The MFO may recruit locally such personnel as required. The authorities of the receiving state will, upon the request of the Director General, assist the MFO in the recruitment of such personnel. Do you understand, ladies and gentlemen? I wonder how many of you really do. You keep talking as if something's going to happen in the future. It's been happening for years, for God's sake. It's over. Title 22, Foreign Relations and Intercourse. Subchapter 18, Privileges and Immunities of International Organizations. Folks, this lists international organizations that are immune from the laws of the United States of America. Can do anything, commit murder, like they did at Waco, and walk away scot-free. You keep screaming for an investigation. Congress cannot investigate. It is the law. They are immune. Immune. They can come in your house, chop your heads off tomorrow. They are immune. Under this law, it specifically states multinational force and observers. Executive Order number 12359, April 22nd, 1982, 47 FR 17791. And many, many more. Many more. The United Nations. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. United Nations Industrial Development Organization. Universal Postal Union. World Health Organization. World Intellectual Property Organization. World Meteorological Organization. International Monetary Fund is immune. International Criminal Police Organization, Interpol, is immune. International Bank for Reconstruction and Development is immune. International Atomic Energy is immune. I can go on and on and on and on and on. For there are many, many, many listed here. International Maritime Satellite Organization is immune. International organizations, their property and their assets, wherever located and by whomsoever held, shall enjoy the same immunity from suit and every form of judicial process as is enjoyed by foreign governments, except to the extent that such organizations may expressly waive their immunity for the purpose of any proceedings or by the terms of any contract. And what do you think the chances of that happening are? Good night. Wake up. God bless you all. Get that dog off my leg. Oh, that's better. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper.
And I'm Pooh.
Why don't you start us off, sweetheart?
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're welcome, honey.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the paper is off the ground. It's going to be a full-blown newspaper. And I mean full size. No joke. The first issue will be out before or no later than March 1st. The name is The Intelligence Analyst. The Intelligence Analyst. If you'd like to subscribe, the subscription rate is $50 per year. And don't write me or call and ask why it's $50. And don't write and tell me or bother to call and say that the spotlight is only $38.50, because we don't care. The Intelligence Analyst is $50 per year. It will be the only and I mean the only objective free press in the United States of America, and maybe even the world. Everything that we report on will be documented. Nothing will be slanted to make you believe anything unless it is clearly labeled and editorial. It'll be a newspaper this nation has not seen the likes of, probably since Benjamin Franklin shut down his own press. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't want to miss it. I can tell you right now, the first issue will knock your socks off. And now, from The Secret Places of the Lion by George Hunt Williamson, London, published by Neville Spearman, 1958. I'm going to quote, and then tonight I'm going to read to you some more from the law, from treaties, from Supreme Court decisions. You don't want to miss it. But from The Secret Places of the Lion, I quote, "The mystery will be completely revealed when the earth will be rent by earthquakes, and the secret places of the lion are secret no more. The mystery of mysteries will be revealed at the sounding of the great trumpet. The earth will reap its reward, because through countless ages the thoughts of evil men have created a vibration that must find expression now on a physical plane. The thoughts of those in the light have created a frequency that will literally open the secret chambers and temples of remote antiquity. As the vibrations sealed and protected the tombs, they can also open the tombs in the fullness of time. For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, and hid that shall not be known." Matthew chapter 10, verse 26. "And there were voices and thunders and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great." Revelation chapter 16, verse 18. Nostradamus predicted a great earthquake that would reveal St. Peter's tomb and destroy the Vatican. That which was discovered and called the tomb of Simon Peter is not the true sepulchre of the apostle. The 7 hills of Rome will be torn asunder, and tombs and truths, even as Joseph's tomb in Egypt was exposed on the night of the final Exodus, will be revealed to a world bathed in the new vibrational radiance of the golden dawn. "He that hath an ear, let him hear. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, saving he that receiveth it." Revelation chapter 2, verse 17. The harvest gathered by the angel messengers will be small. They will eat of the hidden manna. They will be given a white stone. In that stone there will be a new name written. The hidden manna is the frequency of the golden dawn. The white stone is a purified planet. The new name is an entity lifted into another dimension of time and space. When the secret places of the lion open to man, he will find himself in the secret places of the thunder, and the ancient knowledge of the secret places of the stairs will be his once again, after millions of years of seeking. The earth will shake and tremble, the foundations of the hills will move and be shaken, the heavens will proclaim the newness and everlasting oneness of all things. All this shall come to pass in this generation. Until the time of final discovery, the truth of the greater light is like a lion greedy of its prey, as it were a young lion lurking in secret places. One great cycle of time is now ending. Shortly, a new cycle begins. The Christ, or Christos, knocks on the door of the heart of the world. Those that bid him enter shall be the children of the new covenant. Welcome to the New World Order. Read Foreign Relations, April 1974. The article, Hard Road to World Order. It is the blueprint of the destruction of the sovereignty of the United States of America. Title 22, Foreign Relations and Intercourse, page 652. Under definitions, as used in this chapter, the terms arms control and disarmament mean the identification, verification, inspection, limitation, control, reduction, or elimination of armed forces and armaments of all kinds under international agreement, including the necessary steps taken under such an agreement to establish an effective system of international control or to create and strengthen international organizations for the maintenance of peace. Subchapter 2, Organization, United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. There is established an agency to be known as the United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, and very, very, very many paragraphs and pages later, under amendments, you see Americans raised a hue and cry upon reading that definition, because it literally means all arms of all kinds. They raised such a hue and cry that Congress was forced to pass an amendment in 1963. Public Law 88-186 inserted provision precluding construction of this chapter to authorize the regulation of the possession of firearms by an individual. But, ladies and gentlemen, that was a scam. For Executive Order number 11044, Interagency Coordination, September 9, 1987, further elaborated and changed this law. And, folks, under paragraph C of section 1 of that executive order, the terms arms control and disarmament shall be defined as they are defined in section 3A of the Arms Control and Disarmament Act, section 2552A of this title. And let me read to you exactly what that says. It says, ladies and gentlemen, the terms arms control and disarmament mean the identification, verification, inspection, limitation, control, reduction, or elimination of armed forces and armaments of all kinds under international agreement, including the necessary steps taken under such an agreement to establish an effective system of international control, or to create and strengthen international organizations for the maintenance of peace, thus doing away, ladies and gentlemen, doing away with the amendment in 1963 under Public Law 88-186 by changing the definition back to what it originally was. You see how very easy it is to make a law. The public raise a hue and cry. They change the law to conform with the desires of the public, and then, at some short time later, merely insert a small paragraph, putting it all back the way it was before. Title 22, Foreign Relations and Intercourse, page 664, under Amendments. Subsection A, Public Law 100-213, amended, generally substituting provisions authorizing appropriations to carry out this chapter for fiscal years, blankety blank blank. And then down in 1977, subsection A, Public Law 95-108, further changes it. And then in 1975, subsection A, Public Law 94-141, section 141, and then a killer. Subsection D, Public Law 94-141, subsection 148, struck out subsection D relating to prohibition of using appropriated funds for the dissemination of propaganda within the United States concerning the work of the United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. Ain't this fun? And here we have United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, Washington, D.C., December 14th, 1992. Public Law 102-228, December 12th, 1991. Dear Mr. President, well, let me start on the other side. The Inspector General of the Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, ACDA, was assisted in considering executive branch organization for arms control and in reviewing ACDA's performance by a panel of present and former arms control practitioners and Office of Inspector General inspection staff members who prepared this report. Dear Mr. President, I am pleased to submit to you the report reviewing ACDA and the arms control function in the executive branch mandated by Public Law 102-228 of December 1991. As directed in the legislation, I am also submitting the report to the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the Chairman of the Committee on Foreign Relations of the Senate. To assist me in conducting this review of ACDA's performance and executive branch organization for arms control, I appointed a panel under the leadership of retired Ambassador James E. Goodbye, appropriate name, Goodbye, USA. I charged the panel to consider the impact on arms control of the main international security issues facing the nation now and in the future. Arms control remains of critical importance to United States security, but it has been transformed in the wake of the Cold War, and there is a new priority, arms control agenda. Among a wide range of organizational concepts for dealing with arms control new agenda, two are judged most likely to promote U.S. national interests and to meet the challenges of our changed world. To revitalize ACDA and continue it as a separate entity are to fold it into the Department of State. A separate agency is the better solution in order to provide a continuing resource for technical analysis and support in the arms control field. To be an advocate for arms control solutions, to foster innovation, and to serve as a watchdog on issues of arms control, implementation, and non-proliferation. We believe that all of these objectives can be achieved more efficiently and effectively by a separate independent agency. The report notes that ACDA's independent status has enabled it to force discussion of issues on which other agencies held opposing views. Similar situations inevitably will rise again. The President, White House, Washington, D.C. Regional conflicts are seen by the State Department's regional bureaus as their natural preserve. ACDA has been most influential in efforts to resolve regional conflicts when the director devotes time and energy to the problem or when ACDA's technical expertise is relevant. As one ACDA official observed, arms control techniques cannot resolve or diffuse a regional dispute that the political process is not ready for. Nevertheless, ACDA can contribute arms control techniques to supplement other efforts to promote regional settlements. ACDA has been heavily involved, from the director downward, in recent efforts to stop the North Korean nuclear weapons program. The ACDA contributed to the success this effort has enjoyed so far is widely acknowledged. ACDA participation in the interagency task force that coordinated policy during and after the Persian Gulf War was limited to providing one full-time officer who did, however, play a significant role in the task force activities, serving as the unofficial deputy to the director. In the implementation of the President's Middle East Arms Control Initiative of May 27, 1991, however, ACDA has made valuable contributions. It has actively participated in the group charged with classifying weapons that would be subject to restraints in exports to the Middle East, and voluntarily produced a study of the relevant laws of the 5 major exporters of conventional weapons to the area. The 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, identifying the areas in which harmonization would be desirable. It also contributed to the recent Arab-Israeli seminar. And it talks about the revitalization of the Arms Control and Disarmament Act. And it gives a list of names. The following were contacted during the review. And ladies and gentlemen, the names that are in this list are amazing. People have been lying to you for many years about their agendas, about their political belief, about their stance on arms control, and many, many other issues. Here we are. Let's look at Congress. Senators Honorable John Glenn, Honorable Carl Levine, Richard Lugar, Sam Nunn, Claiborne Pell, Paul Simon, Dante Fassel, Porter Goss, Lee Hamilton, John Kyle, and congressional staff members, Senator Biden, Jamie Rubin, Senator Glenn, Leonard Weiss, and Randy Rydell, Senator Gore, Leon Forth, Senator Levin, Richard Fieldhouse, Senator Lugar, Ken Myers, Senator Pell, William Ashworth, Senator Roth, Ian Butterfield, Senator Simon, Jonathan Stein, Senator Wallop, Eric Thomes, Senate Armed Services Committee, Robert Bell, Senate Foreign Relations Committee, David Sullivan, Congressman Kyle, David Smith, Congressman Solars, Stanley Roth, House Foreign Affairs Committee, Ivo Spalatin, House Foreign Affairs Committee, Walker Roberts, House Foreign Affairs Committee, Janie Hatcher, House Foreign Affairs Committee, David Barton, Office of Technology Assessment, Gerald Epstein, and I can go on and on and on. Government-funded research institutions and laboratories, RAND, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, Los Alamos National Laboratory, Arvid Lundy, American Enterprise Institute, Brookings Institution, Dr. Lawrence Korb, Brookings Institution Ambassador retired Raymond L. Garthoff, Brookings Institution, Jan Noland, Council on Foreign Relations. Well, they're not involved in anything. Oh, there's probably no such organization. Just a bunch of old men that sit around and tell stories. Yes. I'm the only one gifted by God to tell you what to think on the EIB network. Council on Foreign Relations. Conspiracy freaks. Conspiracy freaks. Committee for National Security, Georgetown University. Georgetown University again, Georgetown University again, all listing people, prominent professors there. University of Maryland, University of Maryland again, University of Maryland again, George Quester. University of Maryland again, Adam Yarmolinsky. Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Stanford University. Now, the universities aren't involved in all of this decision-making. No, sir. They wouldn't take your guns away, would they? Arms Control Association, Spurgeon M. Keeney, Jr., Jack Mendelson. And guess what, folks? The Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation. Kim Holmes, Baker Sprain, John Getty, James Phillips, the Union of Concerned Scientists, Ambassador retired Jonathan Dean, Washington Quarterly, Brad Roberts, Woodrow Wilson Center, Janone Walker, President, Carnegie Foundation, Ambassador retired Morton Abramowitz, President Henry L. Stimson Center, Michael Crepon, Assistant Director, Henry L. Stimson Center, Amy Smithson, Director, International Institute for Strategic Studies, London, Francois Heisborg. So here we got the United States consulting the director of the International Institute for Strategic Studies in London, a Mr. Francois Heisborg, who's French. I love it. Private sector, FAIC and former SCC Commissioner and ACDA official Sidney Graybeal. SAIC and former state and ACDA official Louis Dunn. Meridian Corporation and former state and ACDA official Lois Nozenzo. Ogden Environmental Services and former ACDA official Charles Van Doren. Isn't he the guy that got kicked off of the $64,000 question for cheating? Schloss Associates and former state and ACDA official Leon Schloss. Lawyer and former SALT I delegation legal advisor John Rhinelander, Esquire. President, BDM Corporation, and former National Security Council staff, Philip Odeen, and many more. In fact, maybe I'll just read you all of these names. Why not? We've got the time. Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, Ronald F. Lehman II. Deputy Director, Stephen R. Hanmer, Jr. Office of Security, James Lannon. Office of Administration, Kathleen Lawrence. Executive Secretary, Barbara Starr. U.S. Commissioner, SCC and BCC, Ambassador Robert Joseph. United States Representative, SVC and JCIC, Ambassador Stephen Steiner. Counselor and Congressional Affairs, Ambassador Richard Hallwill. Policy Planning Group, Michelle Markoff, Director. Senior Military Advisor, Colonel Donald Sellers, United States Air Force. Chief Science Advisor, Nancy Dowdy. Office of General Counsel, Thomas Graham Jr. General Counsel, Mary Elizabeth Hoinks, Deputy. Office of Public Affairs, Sharon Basso, Acting Director. Bureau of Multilateral Affairs, Michael Moody, Assistant Director. David Clinard, Principal Deputy Assistant Director. Donald Molly, Deputy Assistant Director. Bureau of Non-Proliferation Policy, Bradley Gordon, Assistant Director. Norman Wolf, Principal Deputy Assistant Director. Vincent DeCane, Deputy Assistant Director. Bureau of Strategic and Nuclear Affairs, Lucas Fisher, Acting Assistant Director. Bureau of Verification and Implementation, Fred Eimer, Assistant Director. Edward Lacey, Deputy Assistant Director. Central Intelligence Agency, Robert M. Gates, Director. Chairman, National Intelligence Council, Fritz Ermarth. Director, Arms Control Intelligence Staff, Douglas McEakin. Director, Non-Proliferation Center, Gordon Oler. Chief Treaty Monitoring Center, James Peake, from the Defense Intelligence Agency. Panel members also talked with 12 other CIA personnel. Department of Commerce, Assistant Secretary for Export Administration, Acting, James Lee Munyon. Director of Foreign Policy, Office of Technology and Policy Analysis, David Schlechte. Department of Defense, Undersecretary of Policy, Paul Wolfowitz. Assistant Secretary for International Security Policy, Stephen Hadley. OSDISP, Deputy Assistant Secretary, Frank Miller. OSDISP, Deputy Assistant Secretary, Douglas Graham. Deputy Assistant Secretary, William Ingley. Assistant to the Secretary of Defense, Atomic Energy, John Barrelly. Assistant to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Lieutenant General Barry R. McCaffrey, United States Army. Director, Defense Intelligence Agency, Lieutenant General James R. Clapper, USAF. Maybe we can turn it off. Come on, Clapper, work. It's not working. Got to call technical, what do you call it? Technical help there? Yeah. Get that number, would you please? Joint Chiefs of Staff, J5, Deputy Director, International Negotiations. Major General Gary Curtin, United States Air Force. Panel members also talked with 14 other Department of Defense personnel. On-Site Inspection Agency. You didn't even know there was such a thing, did you? On-Site Inspection Agency. Believe me, the Russians have their people here from their On-Site Inspection Agency also. Director, Major General Robert Parker, United States Air Force. Principal Deputy Director, Jorg Minzel, Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. Deputy Director, Edward M. Ift, Department of State. Director, Office of Arms Control and Non-Proliferation, Victor Alessi. Director, Office of Public Affairs, Barry Daniels. National Security Council Staff, Defense Policy and Arms Control, Brigadier General John Gordon, United States Air Force. Susan Koch, Craig Chellis, Richard Davis, Daniel Poneman, Will Toby. International Economic Affairs, Richard Barr. Legal Advisor, Nicholas Rostall. Secretary James A. Baker III, Department of State. Deputy Secretary Lawrence S. Eagleberger. Undersecretary for Political Affairs, Arnold Cantor. Undersecretary for International Security Affairs, Reginald Bartholomew. Undersecretary for International Security Affairs, Frank Wisner. Ambassador at Large, Richard Kennedy. Head of Delegation to the Negotiations on Nuclear and Space Arms. Space arms? Space arms? Ambassador Linton Brooks. Advisor for Strategic Policy, James Timby. Senior Representative for Strategic Technology Policy, Ambassador Alan Wendt. I wish he had went a long time ago. Policy Planning Staff, Robert Einhorn. Assistant Secretary for European and Canadian Affairs, Thomas M.T. Niles. Assistant Secretary for Political Military Affairs, Richard Clark. Assistant Secretary for Political Military Affairs, Robert Gallucci. Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Political Military Affairs, Mark Grossman. Deputy Assistant Secretary for Political Military Affairs, Robert Walpole. Assistant Secretary for International Organization Affairs, John Bolton. Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary for Nuclear Energy and Energy Technology Affairs, Fred McGoldrick. Deputy to the Coordinator for United States Assistance to the New Independent States, Ambassador Richard Armitage. Lay out a few more lines there, Georgie. See if Grits wants some. Oh, that's right. I forgot he ratted on us. Don't give him any. United States Information Agency, U.S. Delegation, U.S. Representative Ambassador Stephen Ledogar, Deputy U.S. Representative Lyle Brecken, Executive Secretary John King, Senior Department of State Representative Robert Dubois, Senior Office of the Secretary of Defense Representative Ron Nelson, Senior Department of Energy Representative Thomas D. Agostino, Senior Joint Chiefs of Staff Representative Colonel David Lambert, United States Army, CD Secretary General Ambassador Vincente Berasetegui, Australian Representative Ambassador Gerard Herrera, with French Deputy Representative, Japanese Representative Ambassador Tanaka, Netherlands Representative Ambassador Hendrik Wagenmakers, Russian Representative Ambassador Sergei Batsanov, Swedish Representative Ambassador Carl Magnus Heiltinius, United Kingdom Deputy Representative Ian Kenyon, Deputy Chief of Mission, U.S. Mission to the United Nations Organizations in Geneva, H. Clark Rogers, and in Vienna and London and United Nations, and on and on and on and on and on. Former officials, Honorable William F. Burns, Major General, United States Army, retired. Honorable Ralph Earl II, Honorable Fred Ilkel, Honorable George M. Senius II, Honorable Gerard C. Smith, Honorable Paul C. Warnke. Many of these names are famous. Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Negotiator, Honorable Paul H. Nitze. Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Negotiator, Honorable Maynard W. Glitman. Head of Delegation to the Negotiations on Nuclear on Space Arms, und Space Arms, Honorable Max Kampelman. Head of Delegation to the Negotiations on Nuclear and Space Arms, Honorable Richard R. Burt. Conventional Armed Forces in Europe Negotiator, Honorable R. James Woolsey. Secretary of Defense, Honorable Donald Rumsfeld. Secretary of Defense, Honorable Frank Carlucci. Ooh, there's a famous one. Director of Central Intelligence, Honorable William Colby. Director of Central Intelligence, Honorable Richard M. Helms. Both extremely shady characters, the likes of Al Capone. Undersecretary of State for Security Assistance, Matthew Nimitz, Esquire. Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, Walter Slocum, Esquire. Deputy Director, Office of Science and Technology Policy and National Security Council Staff, Benjamin Huberman. Now, folks, these are just the ones on the record. You see, they couldn't pass all these bills through Congress if they weren't all involved in this. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Don't go away. Don't go away. I might be back. Oh, Dinah Shore, where are you when we need you now? Oh, for a good old 1955 Chevrolet and a road map of Route 66. We wouldn't have to worry about any of this, would we? This, ladies and gentlemen, is from the United States Department of State Dispatch, Bureau of Public Affairs, November 15th, 1993, Volume 4, Number 46. Let me read you some of these titles here. NAFTA in the Overriding Interest of the United States by Secretary Christopher. NAFTA implementing legislation and related documents by President Clinton. Building a Consensus on International Peacekeeping by Madeleine K. Albright. Open Skies Treaty ratified. Open Skies Treaty? Oh, what's that? Then they got treaty actions and new ambassadors. Don't bust a gut there, Bart. Don't fall off that stool, okay? Open Skies Treaty ratified. You've heard me say before, ladies and gentlemen, that in the ratification of the Disarmament Act and in all of the amendments and everything to it, they've established a method to ratify the disarmament of the countries involved, which is all. So they ratified the Open Skies Treaty. This statement was released by the White House Press Secretary, Washington, D.C., November 3rd, 1993. Listen to this. The President has signed the United States Instrument of Ratification of the Treaty on Open Skies. This multilateral aerial observation regime represents the broadest and most flexible effort to date to promote openness and transparency of military forces and activities. Do you know what that means? It means every day Russian planes fly across the United States. Yes, they did. With intelligence gathering equipment, including cameras, eavesdropping equipment, reconnaissance equipment, and they photograph the entire United States of America, including all of our military installations. They photograph the destruction of our B-52 bombers in the desert that are being chopped apart with huge guillotines, and every day so many of them have to be destroyed, and if they're not, the Russians bring it up at the next disarmament meeting and say, why not? Did you know that? This treaty responds to the new demands of the post-Cold War world and the desire of many states to find innovating means of strengthening confidence and predictability. It will give all participants an agreed way to obtain information about foreign military forces and activities of concern to them. Notice they didn't say anything about foreign military forces getting access to our military deployment and facilities, did they? Under the treaty, each participating state may conduct a certain number of unarmed flights anywhere over the territory of the other participants using approved observation techniques. The data collected during these flights will be available to all participants. This combination of breadth of coverage, flexibility of use, and availability of information enables the Open Skies regime to make a unique contribution to building confidence and enhancing stability. Does it make you feel safer? Present signatories include all NATO allies, the East European members of the former Warsaw Pact, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Georgia, and Kyrgyzstan or something. I can't even pronounce this word. Kyrgyzstan. I bet you can't either. The states of the former Soviet Union and all CSCE states are eligible to join on an accelerated basis. The treaty is open to any nation by consensus approval. The model developed in the treaty could also be important to the reduction of local tensions and the prevention of conflict in regions beyond the scope of current signatories. The Open Skies concept was first put forward by President Eisenhower in 1955. You see, that's how long this has been going on, folks. Even longer. much, much longer. You haven't even got a clue. And then revived by treaty proposed by President George Bush in 1989. It was signed on March 24, 1992, and received the unanimous advice and consent of the United States Senate on August 6, 1993. Ratification in several countries has been completed and in others is underway. The United States looks forward to ratification soon by all signatories and the treaty's early entry into force. You understand what that means? And from the intelligence and security implications of the Treaty on Open Skies, report of the Select Committee on Intelligence, United States Senate, May 19, 1993. This is Senate Report 103-44. On page 7, one area in which a decision mechanism is not specified is what to do if representatives of the observed party believe that the observing party has used a censor improperly. The observed party controls both the airspace and the ground, so it can always bring force to bear. But no means short of that is set forth for preventing the observing party from leaving the country with improperly gathered data. So any dispute in this area could well escalate to this level and become at least a minor diplomatic incident. Nevertheless, what they got. And the chief U.S. representative to the Open Skies negotiations testified to the committee that the United States does not expect to be the primary direct beneficiary. Do you understand? We're not going to benefit from this. The Russians will. And so will all the other countries who are allowed to overfly and photograph all of our military, missile, and strategic installations, railroad lines, highways, cities, anything of military importance that could be classified as armament are promoting for the delivery or transfer of armament from place to place. Does not expect the United States to be the primary direct beneficiary in terms of information gains of the openness that the treaty will provide. Rather, he stated, the greatest information gains resulting from the treaty will go to the great majority of participants other than the United States. How about that, folks? Potential future value. Open Skies may have the most benefits for non-time sensitive issues where research based on bonus coverage is useful. According to the testimony of executive branch officials, the greatest informational benefits to the United States from the Open Skies Treaty may rest in future environmental sensing packages, either under this treaty or pursuant to a future agreement. Environmentally monitoring could provide the model for a future global airborne environmental monitoring regime. Global change research. Listen to this. Man-made disasters. What does that mean? Even the observation that is permitted under the Open Skies Treaty could result in the compromise of sensitive information. Aerial observation of military movements or exercises, industrial plant configurations or activities, and outdoor testing, deployment, or storage of equipment could give foreign countries direct or indirect insight into United States military capabilities and readiness beyond that which the U.S. government is prepared to disclose for the purpose of confidence building. It is also conceivable, although perhaps not likely, given the low resolution of Open Skies sensors, that proprietary industrial information could be compromised. How is anybody going to know what level of observation the sensors can make when the plane is way up in the sky, folks? This is ridiculous. It's dumb. And we're in it. Territory. The first requirement for a realistic Open Skies regime was that all states parties agreed to make their entire territory accessible to aerial observation. This was also the most difficult question to resolve, given the long tradition of keeping certain areas closed in the former Soviet Union. It has now been agreed and specified in the treaty that all territory is open to observation, and that states parties may not restrict observation flights for national security reasons. Let me say that again, just in case you've got wax in your ears. all territory is open to observation, and that states parties may not restrict observation flights for national security reasons. Parties may restrict an observation flight only for legitimate reasons of flight safety. They don't want the spies to get hurt. Quotas. Observation under open skies will not be subject to refusal. Will not be subject to refusal. All parties to the treaty are assigned passive quotas, specifying the number of flights they must accept from other participants in a year. Further parties are assigned active quotas, specifying how many observation flights they may undertake and which countries they may observe. The determination of the passive and active quotas of the participants was a sensitive subject in the negotiations. I'll bet it was. Under the Open Skies Treaty, the United States will have a passive quota of 42 flights annually. In effect, it will be obligated to accept up to 42 flights from other participating states if requested. The United States originally said it could accept 52 flights annually, or 1 flight per week. That number was lowered in the course of the negotiations so that the U.S. number would not exceed the number for Belarus, Russia, also 42. For the first 3 years after entry into force, countries will only have to accept up to 75% of their passive quotas, meaning that the initial United States passive obligation is 31. For the first year of the treaty's operation, only 4 of these 31 potential flights over the United States were requested, all by Belarus, Russia. Well, who did you think was going to request it? Who else cares? Who else has the capability to attack us? Why would they want to know? Which are operating as a group of states parties under the provisions of the treaty. As a group, Belarus, Russia will have a joint quota and will conduct observation flights jointly and receive flights jointly, which may go to any portion of their combined territory. No other participating state expressed interest in observing the United States. Sensors. Aircraft may be equipped with video cameras and panoramic and framing cameras for daylight photography, infrared line scanning systems which can operate by day and night, and synthetic aperture radar which can operate day and night in any weather. The quality of pictures produced by the cameras on an observation aircraft is designed to make it possible to recognize major items of military equipment. For example, to distinguish between a tank and a truck. States parties may consider additional categories of sensors during periodic meetings of the Open Skies Consultative Commission to ensure the fullest possible participation in open skies, including participation by states lacking appropriate sensor technology. Listen to this. The treaty provides that sensors which are used must be commercially available to all states parties to the treaty. So if we're going to use a specific sensor to overfly another country, such as Russia, we must make that same equipment commercially available to Russia and any other state party to the treaty. From the Tampa Tribune, Tampa, Florida, Saturday, April 8, 1994. Military bases face heavy cuts. The list of future closings next year is expected to nearly equal the total number of 3 previous rounds. April 9, 1994, by John Diamond of the Associated Press, Washington. The Clinton administration is preparing to lower the boom on the nation's military bases, with a proposed list of closures next year that could nearly match all the base closures ordered since 1988. And it goes over here. Though through the end of the century and beyond, the cost of shutting down bases is expected to outweigh the savings realized. And then Defense Base Closure and Realignment Commission for the 1995 round of closures. It is important that we use the last round of closures to align our base structure more closely with our future mission needs. What future mission? She said Pentagon officials expect a sizable proposal for closures and realignments. What realignments? Says there's not enough money in the entire defense budget to clean up the bases we're closing, Hansen said. At Pease Air Force Base in New Hampshire, the first base ordered closed, and initial environmental cleanup estimated of $11 million was revised upward over 3 years to $114 million just to clean up one closed base. The Clinton administration is seeking $1.8 billion for base closing, and here's that mysterious word again, realignment. What is the realignment? Folks, many of these bases are not being closed at all. It's a scam. It is a lie. They're being converted to prisons. If you don't believe me, call your congressman and ask him. Come together to stop the spread of weapons and violence in our communities and around the world. International Citizens Assembly to Stop the Spread of Weapons, New York City, April 19th through the 24th, 1995. We seek to build a movement embracing all cultures, races, and nations. This requires peace with social, economic, and environmental justice. It means opposing all weapons of destruction, from nuclear and conventional arms used between nations to handguns and assault weapons used between neighbors. The spread of weapons, large and small, stimulates violence and wastes money and human resources which should instead be used to meet basic human rights and needs. Did you know, ladies and gentlemen, that on the grounds of the United Nations in New York, a foreign country has erected a sculpture of a Smith & Wesson revolver with its barrel tied in a knot? Now, why did they put it on the grounds of the United Nations in the United States of America in New York? Why didn't they put the statue up in their own country, on their own land, on their own property, in their own city? Anybody know the answer to that? Anybody at all? And by golly, here's the Tokyo 1991, the annual meeting of the Trilateral Commission. Trilateral Commission? There's no such thing. No, that's those conspiracy nuts again, and we're not taking any calls from those people. For I, God's gift to the world, am sitting on half my brain. And the other half is safely tucked away in a safety deposit box in Citibank, in the Kremlin branch. Only I am gifted by God to tell you how to think and call the president names for 3 hours every day. So don't listen to these conspiracy freaks who tell you that the Trilateral Commission even exists, because it doesn't even exist and they're not involved in anything, even if they were, and the Rockefellers don't have anything to do with it. Quoting, ladies and gentlemen, from Tokyo, 1991, the annual meeting of the Trilateral Commission. Trialogue 43, the Trilateral Commission was formed in 1973 by private citizens of Western Europe, Japan, and North America to foster closer cooperation among these three regions on common problems. It seeks to improve public understanding of such problems, to support proposals for handling them jointly, and to nurture habits and practices of working together among these regions. The chairman of North America is David Rockefeller. David Rockefeller. Under the table of contents, Japanese developments and their international implications, Asia-Pacific regional developments in a global context. Section 3, future of the international economic order. Section 4, the Gulf crisis. What peace after war? All through here are the terms New World Order, New World Economic Order, global cooperation. International peacekeeping under the United Nations. They have a list of reports and books and publications global cooperation after the Cold War, etc., 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 etc. Good night. God bless you all. Please wake up. God save this republic.